took nearly 3 days. Organization X had completed an exhaustive internal purge from the bottom up. After withstanding a rebellion from within their ranks, they had restructured, reset their rhythm, and were once again ready to march forward. Aside from the old factions and various dark enterprises that were cleaned up, there were also numerous shadowy monsters roaming around the world. Their numbers were few, and it was only a matter of time before they were eradicated. This was also the determination that drove Duan to lead everyone to rise in the future and possess the strength to defend themselves. While they were thriving, Su Qi also began his cultivation. "Are you sure you want to enter here?" Bearded man and the young man beside him stood on an extremely steep cliff, looking apprehensively at what was in front of them. In front of them was an expanse of dark and gloomy whirlpools. Boom, boom, boom. Thunder chaotically stirred in the low sky, and large mountains towering into the clouds filled the Black Sea, conveying a lethal danger that swirled everywhere inside. "This is the most special and also the most dangerous place in our world," Bearded Man said solemnly. "It's where the apostles of God in our world undergo trials and improve. Despite the countless ages that have passed, it still retains ancient dangers and traces of those trials." Su Qi, Bai Yilan, Jiang Ji, and others all stood on the cliff. Jiang Ji reached out his hand to feel the swirling wind, the pain seemingly palpable on his palm. "Indeed, I can already sense a danger that wants to devour spiritual energy." "Then why is this place considered forbidden and no one is allowed to enter?" Bai Yilan asked curiously. It was only after they proposed to strengthen themselves in this world that they learned this place was completely off-limits, a forbidden zone. First, this place itself is where the apostles of God undergo trials, containing the teachings of God and ancient strength, not to be entered by others. Secondly, once you step in, all abilities cease to work, and you can only rely on the core energy stored within your body to survive. Bearded Man sighed. "And nowadays, we naturally can't compare to those apostles from ancient times. Without our abilities, we practically lose all our combat power and cannot enter." Su Qi paused. He then took a step forward and leaped. His body plummeted down in a straight line, violently descending into the violent winds. And the next moment, special territory rules activated. Tools, equipment, and skill effects are prohibited. So it's really like this. The only thing that worked was spiritual energy, which ensured the strength of the body, but it was being consumed at twice the normal rate. Bai Yilan and Jiang Ji also jumped down, their eyes flickering, almost unsteadily stumbling. Jiang Ji seemed to have discovered a new continent. The surrounding environment disrupts and devours spiritual energy when we use it, causing us to lose control and balance. His eyes gleamed. This is the perfect place to control, strengthen spiritual energy, and advance through the ranks. Spiritual energy is fundamental to ascension. Before one can traverse the sequence path like those with extraordinary powers, players can only rely on improving the quality and containment of spiritual energy to push forward on the sequence path. And there's another thing. Bai Yilan nodded slightly, holding a spirit coin in his hand. Absorbing and transforming the energy within spirit coins also speeds up. Within just over 10 seconds, a pattern on the spirit coin in his palm vanished. This was a vital resource for ascending through the ranks. A massive amount of energy was needed to take the next step, and the advantage of spirit coins was stability, but the drawback was their very low efficiency and enormous consumption. An ordinary person would need at least 10 spirit coins to increase a bit of spiritual energy. The two were eager to move forward, but Su Qi stood at the back. "Really?" Su Qi paused, took out a spirit coin, and in less than 5 seconds, all the patterns disappeared, and with a clack, it turned to ash. It does seem to be faster indeed. The energy resources needed vary with different sequence ranks. When he first came into contact with sequences, Left Hand had mentioned that the more powerful an ancient relic, the stronger the sequence, but also the more severe the difficulties of ascension. Ordinary players. A bit of spiritual energy is 10 spirit coins. For top talents like Bai Yilan and Jiang Ji, who step into exceptional ranks, a bit of spiritual power would need around 50 spirit coins. According to the threshold of the 7th rank, 50,000 spiritual power would need at least over 2 million spirit coins. This was why clubs were reluctant to invest in these fallen talents. Falling from the sequence path meant the trials of ancient relics became harder, and to rise again from Dongshan required too many resources. They've started already? Bearded Man was startled. It's like being anxious, like not finding a job now. But the bills for next month are already plastered on your face, and debt collectors could knock on your door at any moment. Bearded Man? This guy always had such refreshing and unique examples. What about you? Aren't you anxious? It wasn't that he saw something, but rather a hunch made him feel that this young man with a somewhat lazy posture was bearing invisible, immense pressure. Me? Su Chi smiled. I'm a person who never worries. If someone comes to collect debts, he'll just end up owing a truckload more in return. Bearded Man? He didn't know much about this guy called Su Buxian, but the Divine Son and even the old professor trusted him greatly, not just giving him the green light all the way but also cooperating with him to set up a multitude of laboratories, working on technology to develop new potions unlike DX515. Let's go. The teleportation gate opened. The two did not linger here long. They all have their own supplies. The transmission array you've activated will cause ripples in this area. There's no need to disturb them often. Just come over once a week to check on them, to see if anyone is injured, and to monitor their progress. Understood. After they left, Bai Yilin and Jiang Ji had already started their training, holding spirit coins in their hands, pushing their spiritual energy to the limit, and continually challenging themselves in this dangerous place. They had been given enough spirit coins for their own use. Bai Yilin wanted to return to 7th rank. He was just one step away, whereas Jiang Ji aimed to continue consolidating his strength and enhancing his spiritual energy and control. As for ascension, he hadn't even thought about it. For 7th rank to ascend to sequence 6 was a huge chasm, a critical path to extraordinary ability, requiring a threshold of spiritual energy starting at 1 million. According to the conversion rate for spirit coins, he would need at least 50 million spirit coins. He couldn't produce that sum even if he sold all his possessions, let alone himself. He could only improve his spiritual power and control, to enhance his combat ability and seize better opportunities to earn resources for ascension. As for Su Chi, he was the least anxious of them all. Having completed the main thread here, my spiritual power has broken through to 150,000 spiritual energy points. But it's not that simple. He possessed 3 paths of series: Ancient God's Heart, Spiritual Eyes, and Angel Fall Gift. Each was extremely top tier, and while his abilities were exceedingly strong, the required resources were remarkably high. Moreover, others needed to ascend just one sequence, while Su Chi had to manage 3 simultaneously. Fortunately, I still have some assets, over 80 million spirit coins, and, although it needs more energy, the rate at which I absorb spiritual energy has also sped up. Su Chi could absorb 1 spirit coin every 5 seconds in this environment. If he were to ascend on his own, for the time being, he wouldn't need to worry about lacking resources. However, while increasing strength is necessary, Su Chi had another exceptionally ingenious idea. The Shadow Army, despite extensive training, making every shadow possess significant overall strength, still finds it difficult to stand alone. The Hustlers sect needs elites. Whether it's Ganwansue, the squad captain, team captain, or even an ordinary shadow, all need to reach the elite level of a supernova. It's not because Su Chi demands too much, but to stand firm, to withstand the forces among many formidable entities, this strength is a must. So, Su Chi's eyes flickered. He extended his hand, the pattern on his arm shimmering. The next moment, Ganwansue, 3 figures rose up from the shadows on the ground, and the vast number of shadows of the Shadow Army, all having reached sequence strength, also appeared. At present, the Black Shadow Corps has 150 members, though none have officially entered a series, possessing only basic combat strength. But against Series 9 or above, they stand no chance, even when wielding weapons made from Dark Star, since they lack the spiritual energy to utilize them. After all, sequence is key. Without ascending a sequence, one is ultimately choked at that upper limit. Sect Hierarch, this is the private grounds of the Hustlers sect. All members of the Black Shadow Corps, including yourselves, will undertake rigorous trials here for the next month. Understood. Of course, they too needed cultivation resources. Ganwansue held 1 million spirit coins himself, approaching 7th rank, while the others hadn't stepped into a sequence. Su Chi distributed 50,000 spirit coins to each of them, to spend so much in an instant. And this is just for those of the low sequence, and there are just over 200 of them. Su Chi looked at the remaining spirit coins, knowing that sustaining the consumption of the Shadow Army was difficult on his own. Not to mention later on, when the Hustler sect develops, how terrifying the daily expenditure and consumption will be. In order to develop, money is always the most crucial part. The key is, I still don't know what state the Hustlers' Chamber of Commerce is in now, Su Chi muttered to himself. Even though I left the Super Dream Child protocol with Nancy, Sigong Chong, and Simon, and their business capabilities are extremely strong, having even brought in the Spirit King's son and Xing Ho as an endorsement, but carving a path among countless powers and seizing even a slice of the cake is an extremely difficult task. Don't wait until next time to hear news of the Hustlers' Chamber of Commerce, to discover it's among those crushed and bankrupt forces. In any case, now was a time of multiple concurrent processes. Su Chi was very busy, yet also idle with nothing better to do. During the intense trials, he even dragged Xiao Meng along to play Go. Occasionally, he could open a small window in his field of vision to broadcast some TV shows from this world and the like. During these times, the power of the evil god hadn't erupted. To be precise, there were signs of an outbreak, but it was suppressed by the gift he had obtained from the pigeon god. But Su Chi could feel it. It was a temporary solution, not a cure. The bursting power was suppressed, but it was accumulating over there. Once it couldn't be suppressed any longer, even Su Chi didn't know what kind of commotion would arise. However, Su Chi was also rapidly increasing his strength. This was a race against time as well as a rare opportunity. By the time this fragment of the world ship reached its destination, Su Chi was bound to undergo unimaginable changes. The entire superpower world was rapidly moving towards a certain coordinate amidst the chaotic nihility. In the boundless void, it was filled with chaos that made it hard to see around, and generally it was very unlikely to encounter other worlds. Of course, the huge ripples created by the world movement could twist the chaos, like paddles stirring the calm sea surface, creating strong waves, and spreading these ripples far and wide. It would attract the attention of some dangerous beings. And at this very moment, within the chaos, the coordinates of a world were rippling, seemingly calm on the surface. But, internally, it was like the desperation of doomsday. Kill! These aliens actually want to deprive us of everything. How can we let them succeed? Fire at the fleet in the Sky Dome. This world's level of technology was high. There were laser beams, electromagnetic guns, nuclear energy railguns, and such, instantly unleashing amazing energy. Horrific explosions erupted one after another in the Sky Dome. But, after the flames dispersed, the immense objects in the Sky Dome blocked them all. A starship, huge as a mountain, with a dazzling protective shield that had machinery on it shifting like fluid in astounding transformations. Why? Our entire power couldn't even break through the defense of this alien fleet. The people of this world were filled with despair. Pretty decent technological strength, observing that many key theories are just a century away from breaking through, but unfortunately, you don't have a century for your technology to explode. A detached voice resonated within the starship. Let's start the harvest now. The starship's fluid form came to life, changing. In the next moment, a large number of densely packed energy weapons began to assemble, silver-white tubes, yet within them shimmered glowing blue energy, violently converging. As if all the light from the entire Sky Dome was being sucked away, everyone's sight dimmed. In despair, they screamed, "No!" And in the next instant, terrifying energy obliterated all the main forces, and half the city, like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. A horrifying red light turned this place into a living hell. "This is the fate of the weak," said the people on the starship, looking indifferently at this scene. They were the cruel yet common raiders of the present world, wielding the power of spatial transfer, easily capable of pillaging various indigenous, isolated worlds. Many native worlds were plundered in this way, lacking sufficient power to protect themselves from such bandits. Some might still give these worlds a glimmer of hope, not exterminating all life. But most were merely cruel, directly annihilating and destroying everything. The captain on the starship was already speaking. "Prepare to begin the plunder. Take away everything of value. This world has been detected to contain many valuable substances, which should sell for quite a few spirit coins. Then, Captain, of course, deploy the annihilation virus." And they were the latter. However, just as they were preparing for the operation, "My lord," someone in the starship's control room suddenly spoke up. "Another world fluctuation has been detected, and it seems to be approaching us. It's estimated to arrive in about a day." The presence in the starship shifted slightly. "What's the peak fluctuation?" Peak referred to the highest energy that this world could detect. "The peak is weaker than this world, but..." "What?" the person hurriedly said. "The fluctuation is very severe. It remains on a continuous straight line and then, for just a millisecond, it spikes extremely high." It spoke calmly and indifferently. "Does this world have any traces of contact with the present world? If there's contact with the present world, the ripples of fluctuation generally differ in frequency, making it easy to judge if the other side is a native world." "There aren't any, my lord." "That's excellent, my lord. It means this world possesses extremely valuable energy substances." The assistant nearby pushed up his glasses and licked his lips. "What should we do now?" That presence quietly and calmly said. "Then let's temporarily halt the destruction of this world to avoid alerting them. Let them come, and then catch them all." "Yes." Superpower X organization begins its first round of large-scale recruitment open to all citizens. All tests will be free and come with significant subsidies. The Starfire District has been restructured, planned by the lifetime-honored Su Buxian and Divine Sun Du-En. Starfire Potion Type 1 is currently being developed, first used by all high-level members of the X organization before being opened to the general public. This was a global news broadcast a month later. During the dark times following the exposure of the Superpower Association, a global shock was triggered and the X organization also decided to release footage from the battles. It made everyone aware of the difficulty of the war, naturally editing out the words of the Dark Venerable and also publicly presenting Su Buxian and other players as external aid providers. The times have indeed changed. In past battles, all God's followers would engage in prayers and resonance. But now, the old professor silently observed various fan edits on the internet, hot discussions, and even previous battlefields that were off-limits had become popular spots for influencers. This postmodernism, he sighed lightly, unable to comprehend the younger generation anymore. But, although that's the case, a large number of descendants are still courageously joining, even more so than before. Everything was developing in a positive direction, but the old professor's heart was not at ease, as a great enemy of the Venerable was not far away, and 1 month was too short a time for most people to train and form combat abilities. They could only rely on those with abilities to hold out. That boundary area. The old professor's mind was spreading, focusing on the outskirts of that special area. They haven't come out yet, and, every other day, there would suddenly be a burst of astonishing aura from there, causing quite a stir. Because of the special nature of that boundary area, even he could not discern the slightest detail. Boom! At that moment, in this boundary area, an extremely adverse and terrifying weather was sweeping through the region, with thunderstorms and tornadoes constantly erupting and tsunamis rolling up hundreds of meters of terrifying waves. Moreover, ancient beasts in the sea and on the islands, with the nature of predators, were attacking these outsiders. In this boundary that forbidden abilities, these beasts were kings. Even the past angel envoys, once discovered by a group of beasts, could only run day and night to deplete all their spiritual energy before finding a place to settle and gradually recover. However, that was before. Now is now. 3 black shadows were standing between the large islands, extending a hand forward. Kill! The shadow army stood among the bushes, some wearing ghost face masks, others wrapped in dark, chaotic auras. They moved instantaneously, attacking forcefully without hesitation, their weapons materializing from black smoke in the blink of an eye. Instantly, the tables turned from being besieged to counterattacking. Bai Yilan and Jiang Ji silently watched this scene from a distance. Their auras were also completely different from before. Bai Yilan had successfully advanced to the 7th rank. His strength long missed, now returned, and the ascension process was not small. Jiang Ji, on the other hand, had further mastered his control over spiritual energy, increasing its value by 2/3 in this 1 month. More importantly, he had greatly improved his control over externalizing spiritual energy, flying, and so on. However, both of their attention was now on this group of black shadows. Dressed in dark suits and with eyes of starfire looking unusually calm, they all displayed astonishing combat abilities. This month, from the beginning when these black shadows had great difficulty even climbing, they are now able to confront these ancient beasts head-on. This terrifying growth rate. Bai Yilan truly saw that the shadow army was well-disciplined and possessed strong learning abilities. Jiang Ji shook his head. Su Buxian wouldn't have poured all the spirit coins into these black shadows, would he? These summons, strength, once enhanced, can truly possess remarkable collective combat strength. But if one does not prioritize enhancing their own ability first, they'll be useless against a true powerhouse, no matter how numerous they are. Bai Yilan looked into the depths. We haven't seen him for half a month. Boom! In the distance, a terrifying thunderstorm merged with massive waves, creating an isolated area. And within that area stood a solitary figure. Su Qi was standing in the middle of this boundary, which was not only filled with extreme phenomena, but also had an intense atmospheric pressure, akin to 100 times that of the external world's gravity. In the midst of terrifying high pressure, Su Qi's spiritual energy clearly formed a thin, vulnerable energy layer around him, but it was visibly evaporating and depleting at a rapid pace. Yet, he nonchalantly propped his chin, looking at the scene before him thoughtfully. It's been a month, and I've spent 50 million spirit coins. My spiritual power has now reached around 500,000. Leveraging the terrifying pressure and destructive environment, Su Qi's rate of absorbing spirit coins and the speed of integrating spiritual energy into his body had increased several times over, allowing him to quintuple his spiritual power in a month. If he were now to gather all his spiritual energy, condense it, and self-destruct, he would effectively be a human-shaped nuclear bomb. But these are just theoretical values. After all, spiritual energy depends on one's control ability. Normal users, in each bodily burst, actually use less than 1/1000th of their spiritual energy. It is often only by using skills and tools that more spiritual energy efficiency can be burst forth, which is why many people focus solely on using abilities and various items in combat. But Su Qi can now be said to have reached an absurd level. After all, he possesses 3 sequence paths, simultaneously owning 3 times the recovery rate and burst efficiency, and his control over spiritual energy has significantly improved. But even so, it's still lacking. Su Qi stretched out his hand. He seemed to see the threshold of 7th rank, but in reality, he could just barely touch it, feeling like he was looking at a storm through a glass window, able to hear the howling wind, yet unable to touch it. Just need a breakthrough to shatter this glass. But Su Qi was not in a rush. The spiritual power value still has room to rise, and it hasn't reached the limit. With my current expenditure rate of spirit coins, I could probably just about make it to that extremely evil world. Never mind these. Su Qi withdrew his thoughts, his eyes somewhat shifting, as phantom wings gradually emerged behind him. Let's burst one first. These 3 ancient relics, the 3rd sequence of powerful abilities, possess the strongest defensive abilities. Blazing Angel Descent. Effect. Infusing spiritual energy will form angels' wings behind you. You will have various powerful angel racial traits. The more wings, the higher the ranking. At this moment, Su Qi had injected all his spiritual energy. Behind him, a half-wing projection formed. Yet even so, the astonishing holy light already enveloped him, shielding everything around him, instantly suppressing the terrifying thunderstorm. This was holy light protection. It naturally forms a protective aura around, providing a defense 10 times stronger than your spiritual energy. That is to say, to harm him, one would need to break through this defensive shell first. Su Qi's dark star slowly extended his hand, intense holy light gathering within. Holy Sword. Your weapon carries the indomitable effect and possesses a one-time holy light ground purge burst. Can only be used once per transformation. Su Qi swung the dark star in his hand. With every inch it moved, its potential power exponentially increased, the terrifying holy light almost lighting up the entire area. Then, boom! The terrifying holy light erupted, as if to split the entire region's storm in half, bursting forth instantly. The massive clouds in the upper layer of this special region were forcibly cleaved open, as if directly tearing a ravine. Boom! The thunderstorm screamed even louder in this instant, bursting out a fearsome wail. Su Qi took a quick breath. This move, of course, also had a strong consumption rate. Using it now was still too much of a strain. Moreover, there was one last trait, Holy Corridor. This was also a feature that Su Qi considered quite perverse. Activating this skill allows the player to instantly enter another space, the Holy Corridor, and appear elsewhere through the corridor. The higher the rank, the larger the range of the corridor. It might not seem particularly special, but Su Qi immediately recognized its use. This is a very flexible ability. If used well, it can almost make one immune to all sorts of external attacks, allow one to flee far, and even enter many sealed-off, unreachable places. Su Qi couldn't help but feel a bit emotional. One can only say that the angel race truly is worthy of the divine race, with terrifying bloodline strength, possessing extremely OP and freakishly powerful abilities. No wonder so many people yearned to step into the angel series. Even just the ordinary bloodline was highly sought after. Of course, he also realized why the noble-blooded angels were so haughty. Ordinary people are born with 100 million and even have wind following them as they walk. Not to mention being born at the pinnacle above others. The terrifying holy light had risen to the sky and sustained for 10 seconds before it dimmed, and after about 3 or 4 seconds, the surrounding dark clouds finally filled the ravine like ocean waves. And at that moment, boom! It was as if there was a terrifying ripple bursting out from Su Qi. The projection of a sheep head in Su Qi's eyes flickered, almost on the verge of exploding. Is it coming again at this time? Su Qi actually got somewhat used to it. His spiritual energy would typically go berserk whenever it was nearly depleted. However, Su Qi naturally had a way to deal with it. He took out a leaf and placed it on his forehead. The leaf shimmered with a green glow, enveloping Su Qi in a very healing light. At the same time, it also startlingly stabilized the furious aura. This was a gift from the guardian god, an offering from the world ship, a leaf. World Tree Withered Leaf. Type, Tool. Effect. Can point to its World Tree branch coordinates, and when placed on oneself, it can eliminate any negative buff. Can only be used once every 24 hours. Cost. None. P.S. Used to create the world ship, it connects many worlds together. Even just a single leaf possesses extraordinary power. This was also an extraordinary item, capable of eliminating any negative buff. Such an ability completely defied all logic. Moreover, just a nearly withered leaf held such power. It was difficult to imagine what kind of divine item the actual world tree itself would be. Unfortunately, only when the evil god goes berserk does it count as a negative. Even if it's eliminated, the subsequent power will still burst forth. So, this could only delay, not cure, the issue. To thoroughly destroy this burst of power, Su Qi still needed to face the evil god in a direct battle. All right, now that my spiritual energy is almost depleted, it's time to continue absorbing spirit coins. Su Qi took advantage of the fact that his blazing angel state had not ended yet and directly started flying. Don't say, you really shouldn't say, even with just half a wing, I can actually fly. But it looks a bit ugly. He stretched out his hand. Dark star, combined with liquid metal, transformed directly. On his other side, steel mechanical angel wings formed, and then he directly spiraled into the air, flying towards a nearby safe place. Meanwhile, outside, Organization X's first large-scale recruitment for new ability users was taking place. Due to the large number of people, a huge square was chosen, but even so it was crowded. Duen was also there in the seats, approving, reviewing, trying to handle all the details of big and small matters as thoroughly as possible. He had been extremely busy this past month, toiling tirelessly and not allowing himself to relax at critical moments. He tried his best to unearth potential users, ability users. But being too approachable was actually not a good thing. Divine Sun, how is my ability? You? Duen frowned as he looked at the information. The regular contraction of the muscles, and the pushing of the explosives. And this person even had glowing eyes. I can demonstrate it for you right now. To demonstrate or not to demonstrate. Duen's teeth hurt. He was ultimately inexperienced and too earnest in character, unsure how to act according to the newly established regulations. If Su Qi were here, he would definitely let the person demonstrate, as it was truly rare, and after the demonstration he would directly form an overpowered team with a bunch of weird abilities. Even if their combat power was lacking, using them to annoy the enemy, that would be quite badass. Duen was about to respond. After all, this ability, though somewhat disgusting, was still a form of strength. Moreover, the most important aspect was his ineptitude in declining sincere, dedicated individuals, as their eyes brimmed with the same yearning they had when they first joined the Superpower Association. You! He was preparing to speak, but in the next moment, his mind slightly rippled, as a warning from the temple alerted him in his role as the controller. Duen's eyebrows furrowed slightly. Our world, on its current path, has detected other fluctuations? At the same time, teleportation gates suddenly opened around him, and Bearded Man and others were staring at him solemnly from another location. Divine Sun. There's something important. The appearance of the teleportation gates and a few individuals from Organization X made everyone present light up, just about to shout. But Duen and the others left immediately, disappearing from sight. Have you noticed anything? Duen asked with some gravity. Our world's probing instruments have detected a frequency being broadcast outward, which is in the process of encoding, but it should not be dangerous as we had imagined. Is that so? Duen felt uneasy. Their greatest enemy at the moment was the Horror Venerable from the Abyss Church. Although logically speaking, it would be difficult for the adversary to appear in their world in a short period of time. However, with the coordinates locked, the power of the Abyss Church spanned the entire present world, and no one knew what could happen. It took approximately 20 minutes. An observer spoke up. We've pretty much figured out the frequency. It seems to be another civilized world transmitting information to outer planets via electromagnetic waves. They appear to be a secluded world that has never contacted the outside. The information hasn't been fully decoded, but it includes their chemical components, physical dimensions, atomic structures, and entertainment products like music. It's akin to an amicable business card cast into deep space. The old professor spoke softly. It doesn't seem dangerous. More like a world curious about the outside and naively beginning to explore beyond their own planet. But he looked at the probing trajectory. It seems inevitable that we will directly collide with it. Is that a collision? What happens when worlds collide? A young ability user beside him couldn't help but ask. Two leaves in the water cause ripples to drift, and when they touch, the leaves share the strongest ripples and drift together. Bearded Man paused. And the two worlds, because of these ripples, will be connected to each other, essentially opening a channel for contact. Of course, if we exert some effort, we can also separate them. Nevertheless, Given that it appears to be a friendly, ordinary world for now, making contact shouldn't be an issue, especially since the path cannot be altered. What about the contact coordinates? They're still being calculated, the researcher said somewhat frantically, but we estimate it will take 42 hours to obtain the results. After all, the collision of the ripples from two worlds would generate an enormous number of unpredictable variables. To precisely predict the origin of the ripples is 1,000 times more difficult than forecasting tomorrow's weather. And just then, the screen flashed slightly, and information appeared. Tomorrow at 10:25 a.m., the ripples of the two worlds will merge into one channel. The specific coordinates are all the details of the coordinates displayed on the screen. This is Brother Su's artificial intelligence assistant. Duan was not witnessing Xiaomeng's power for the first time. After all, just before that decisive battle began, Xiaomeng easily dismantled the entire array of the Superpower Association's defenses. It only took a few seconds, murmured the probing staff. What terrifying computing power! Xiaomeng, analyzing those ripple data, easily computed them with less than 1% of her full computing strength. She also continued calculating the development of Starfire potions, and even though Starfire Potion Type 1 had been produced, it was just the beginning. Her master needed more potent potions. The difficulty of their development also naturally rose exponentially. If we now allocate full computing power, it's estimated it will take 1 year and 10 months to develop a potion suitable for Sequence 10. This was the threshold that needed to be met for her master. After all, within the entire present world, the real minimum threshold was Sequence 10, which also marked the watershed between ordinary people and the sequence. Only after this potion was completed could there be a substantial demand for it. With all computing power allocated, Xiaomeng had very little time to evolve herself and had almost completely absorbed all the information this world could offer. Further collection would yield diminishing returns, making full-force development more efficient. Furthermore, according to the large energy model, the other world has recently experienced a Sequence 6 level of spiritual energy destruction, with an estimated danger rating as extremely high. Extremely high? Duan felt a weight in his heart, looking at everyone. Let's get ready then. Though I hope the other world is friendly, and I wish to treat them sincerely, it looks like there are different variables present. Prepare for battle. He bore an incredibly heavy burden at this moment. Being the divine son meant he had to be responsible for the entire world. He couldn't make reckless, irresponsible decisions. Do we need to inform Su Buxian and the others? Bearded Man inquired. We can't inform them, after all. The place they've entered is exceptional. The old professor gazed at the coordinates on the screen, his profound eyes slightly stirred. However, this coordinate, it seems to be in that location. The Hustler's System Manager. The old professor looked at the screen. Can you notify our friend Su Buxian? Yes. Then I'll leave it in your hands. At this very moment. Boom! Aboard the starship, the place was suffused with the elegance of sequence blended with technology. A cold atmosphere steeped in extraordinarily dangerous strength. We're nearly there, my lord. Their world will start Ripple's contact in 5 minutes. It seems they are not excessively cautious. My lord, what shall we do? The captain of the starship, with a light sway of his slender fingers adorned with nano-like flowing liquid that was gliding on his skin, calmly stated, Skittish fish are always cautious before they surface. To prevent it from fleeing, one must not stir any commotion. Yet the moment it comes into view, it is met with an unexpected and lethal chill. Understood. The starship floated in the sky dome. Such a massive object resembled a city, completely blocking out all light from above. And the city below, countless people's minds were fraught with fear, vying to escape the city, while those who stayed knew that fleeing anywhere else was futile. They were the core individuals of this world who had given up hope. Why did we transmit our information to the unknown beyond? Was it just to probe for alien life as we hypothesized? A scientist trembled as he muttered to himself. Now what has been brought upon us is cosmic destruction. There is no peaceful exchange of civilizations beyond this universe, but a darkness of the forest filled with brutality and plunder. We have made a grave mistake. The pursuit of the unknown through science is built on the scale of time. Time, step by step, proves whether each of their actions is correct, while the consequences of errors are to be borne by future generations. However, the result has now emerged. Someone wiped the dust from their face. Another city was destroyed, yet a large number of people still lived. Though they wished to resist, they were no longer organized or capable, merely awaiting the imminent arrival of death. But why haven't they taken action yet? Why do they remain suspended in that part of the sky dome? What do they want to do? What should we do now? A corner of the unknown, revealed in a blurred world, was a force to be feared, one that heralded cosmic destruction. At that moment, their satellites, radio telescopes, detectors, and more suddenly all received intense static noise. Is this a new signal? Wait, look at the sky. There's a change. Where the entire sky dome and horizon met, numerous illusions like a mirage interlaced together, causing phenomenal turbulence that generated eerie ripples. What on earth is this phenomenon? Why would it cause such fluctuations, completely contrary to our physical theories? And at this very moment, the massive starship also began to move slowly. Although it seemed slow, it reached a terrifying velocity. Once the ripples formed, they would strike their opponent completely unprepared. Such is the law of the raiders. Once they make a move, they must exert the greatest intimidation and ruthlessness. My lord, the starship has entered the ripples. We are ready to attack. Then kill, said the starship's captain slowly. Boom, boom, boom. A vast number of energy particles were converging, and the terrifying strength produced by the compression of the particles was nearly bursting forth. And just at the 10th second after entering the ripples, the starship began to tremble slightly. One after another, horrific storms began to rage, and a tremendous burst of force exploded like wind sweeping through leaves. What's happening? The assistant beside the starship's captain looked perplexed. This place is filled with various dangerous turbulences. It doesn't seem to be due to environmental factors, but rather special spatial anomalies. And, due to the influence of these turbulences, the system's intrusion can't cover the entire world. However, we've detected a large number of life forms within a 50-kilometer radius, their power estimated to be around 7th rank, with a few approaching 6th rank. It seems they were well prepared. Boom! Rumble! A massive thunderstorm was continuously bursting forth with terrifying might, causing the entire enormous starship system to emit warnings. The assistant appeared somewhat dazed. How can there be such terrifying turbulence in this place? They were sailing through the nihility of the present world and rarely encountered such horrific space turbulence. After all, the cause of turbulence was a tear in the very fabric of space. Such space turbulence occurring in such a world. The captain's eyes sparkled. It seems we've stumbled upon a treasure. The force capable of tearing open space must be extraordinary. Immediately probe the center of the turbulence. But, my lord, those life forms. Deploy 5 Starship Annihilation Teams. Understood. Starship Annihilation Teams, equipped with the highest combat-level war armor and carrying the most advanced and powerful weapons on board the starship, had the fighting strength to effortlessly deal with a multitude of 7th rank, let alone the life forms outside. We've probed the coordinates. There's an astonishing energy there. Advance. The massive starship headed straight for the center of the turbulence. And on the starship, there were 5 starship carriers, bursting forth with incredible speed. Are we going to slaughter again? The starship squad was enveloped in fierce war armor, seemingly integrated with their very beings, with energy cores inside their bodies, embedded in their chests, flashing blue with terrifying energy fluctuations. The life forms seem to sense us. They are even changing formation. It seems their investigation ability is not weak. But it's useless. Their eyes were cold and cruel, like that of merciless machines, filled with an unmistakable intent to kill. They were closing in on their target, propelled through midair by the forceful streams of air. Meanwhile, at the center of the entire special area, there was only Su Chi, listening to the apocalyptic howls around him, watching the terrifying turbulence that seemed like the sky was crumbling and the earth was splitting apart. And the starting point of it all was simply, on a distant platform, a pair of scissors that looked like they were for trimming plants. The so-called trial land is, in reality, a dangerous region formed by the horrific turbulence of spatial cracks and the chaotic surge of energy. But I believe that this is all because the pigeon god carelessly tossed a pair of scissors, inadvertently creating all this, which was then transformed into the so-called trial land. Su Chi's conjecture wasn't unfounded. As he saw information fragments on the scissors, the truth seemed to be just that. This was a pair of scissors used by the guardian god to trim feathers. Another divine artifact. Godly items. There were no ordinary items. Just anything casually discarded can possess such might. Su Chi also looked around. And all this time, no angel envoy could get close to here, hence no one has ever seen the center of this turbulence. After all, this place had reached the terrible strength of 107th rank self-destructing every second. As for how he got here, naturally it was the Holy Light Return. He was now hiding within the Holy Light Return, able to see everything, yet was separated by a different dimension, and although the space turbulence here was exceptionally terrifying, it still couldn't shake the strength of this corridor. One could only say, the noble bloodline of an angel really holds up. Su Chi looked at the spatial crack like a black hole created by the terrifying turbulence and pondered. Taking away that pair of scissors seems to be a bit too difficult, but how could he possibly pass up on a divine artifact? He was figuring out a way. If all else failed, summon God. Have the evil god brother make an appearance and blow it up. Then, help himself take down a city. Only, things didn't develop as anticipated. Master, a message from Xiao Meng came through. A starship that has collided and entered from another world is heading in your direction. On board is an unknown new force, with an initial estimate that the overall starship strength reaches Sequence 6. Please be extremely careful. Su Chi was in the Holy Light Corridor, and he murmured, a new unknown power? The fact that Xiao Meng had spoken these words surprised Su Chi. Given that Xiao Meng now possessed a great amount of information and even more so, she had collected and understood a vast array of sequences. If it were just an ordinary sequence or spiritual power, she wouldn't have used such terminology. Moreover, it was Sequence 6. Although it was only an appraisal of its energy, reaching the level of Sequence 6 meant it had at least over 1 million levels of spiritual energy, which was naturally quite terrifying. The other party has also sensed the anomaly here and is coming. Su Chi wasn't surprised by its appearance. The fragment of the world ship had been in a dormant, sealed state before, and now, amid constant travel, it produced a great number of ripple fluctuations and was heading toward the extremely evil world. The closer it got to the extremely evil world, the higher the likelihood of encountering others. Now it seemed they were very close to the extremely evil world. Boom! 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 Su Chi raised his head and looked into the distance. A massive behemoth was unsteadily breaking through the extreme turbulence in the distance, coming closer step by step. The oppressive feeling was incredibly strong. Have the three body people come for us? The violent air currents brought by the advancing opponent forcibly pushed aside the surrounding turbulence. Su Chi's eyes slightly narrowed. In the present world, he had not really seen such powerful technological entities. After all, manufactured products had limits far inferior to the widespread breakthroughs enabled by sequences. He was now in the Holy Light Corridor. Movement here consumed spiritual energy, and one couldn't stay longer than 10 minutes a day. This is the new unknown power. Su Chi looked at the massive starship. Xiao Meng, release all computing power. Can you invade it? Cannot. Xiao Meng, now in her complete super dream form, still sounded slightly confused and puzzled. This starship structure, materials, everything is a normal product of technology. But there is a core inside. I have never seen such a complex, mysterious intelligence. As if it possesses a higher level system. Su Chi's gaze flickered, and he looked over as well. Is that so? The first word that came to his mind was Divine Machinery Kingdom, and while he did not deeply understand this dimension, if it involved intelligence, machinery, and technology, then undoubtedly no one could surpass it. It encompassed the entire evolutionary path of non-flesh and blood beings. Boom! 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 All kinds of energy began to surge from the starship, fighting against the increasingly powerful, horrifying turbulence around. The power of the tear in reality, carved by God's scissors, was naturally astonishing. Normally, Su Chi could not approach this place and could only glance over by means of the Holy Light Corridor, but once he appeared in this turbulence, if he did not use various divine artifacts, he probably wouldn't last a minute before being torn into pieces. Such a massive starship could not easily approach either, yet it continued to forge a path through it. Feathers and scissors seem more popular than I thought. Su Chi watched a message from Xiao Meng stating that their annihilation team had already engaged in battle with the people from Organization X. However, he was not worried. The Divine Son who had taken control of the temple and the priest who had recovered. Additionally, both Bai Yilin and Jiang Ji were on their way. Both had grown very quickly. If Bai Yilin encountered that bespectacled man again, she could easily kill him. Then let us handle this side. Xiao Meng, somewhat bewildered, asked, Master, who are us? Now it's just you and me. Who do you think? Xiao Meng's thoughts seemed slow to catch up. But Master, I am just a line of AI code, without life and with no fighting capability. And, based on my judgment, the power you used in the previous battle was not enough to break through the starship's defenses. If a conflict with the opponent arises, the probability that Master could withstand a strike from this starship does not exceed 0.51%. Su Chi, don't look at cold data and don't predict the unknown. You don't understand just the starship, but also your master. Xiao Meng sent a string of ellipses, as the intelligent program struggled to understand Su Chi's words. Even you don't know how many cards I still hold. Su Chi naturally referred to all the cards related to God. Although the Super Dream Protocol could analyze various bits of information, it was at a very low level. If it encountered Abyss high-order power, it would likely directly cause the Super Dream Protocol system to crash. Xiao Meng, as an intelligent program, was still too naive. However, Su Chi still did not intend to use these powers. He had already opened his mail. Firstly, the Superpower World instance was a 12-person nightmare-level team instance. Su Chi had completed all 3 main lines inside, so naturally, the rewards were extraordinary. He just hadn't collected it yet, given the special nature of the reward. Immortal Forger. You can choose one skill or item to forge. Upon completion of the forge, it will be upgraded in rank, its quality becoming immortal, only effective for items or skills below perfect. Just reading the description indicated how powerful this reward was, able to significantly upgrade the rank of items or skills of ordinary quality but good effectiveness. Low quality, ordinary, excellent, perfect, immortal, legend. This is how Paradise categorizes the quality of various items. If you set aside some special effects, you can clearly see how big the gap is between different qualities, and how high-quality items suppress and take priority over low-quality ones. Of course, above legend, there is divine level, but it seems that Paradise doesn't think players can reach this layer, so they have not provided additional levels for it. Su Chi naturally had his considerations for the use of this forge. First, he would choose items or skills of low quality with outstanding effects despite evident flaws, to maximize their worth. Ordinary items like the Dark Wind boots and the rugby player plate armor were directly excluded by Su Chi. Currently, Su Chi thought there were 2 things that could be upgraded. One was the self-destruction skill, Die Together, that consumes all physical strength. The other was Artificial Team's Counterattack, which gave machines a 50% chance of malfunctioning. Both were of ordinary quality, but upgrading them would mean jumping 3 levels, greatly increasing their effects. The former could potentially become a spiritual energy self-destruction, but it's not worth the gamble. The latter is a causality skill, possessing high potential and applicability. Su Chi naturally chose Artificial Team's Counterattack. After using a special item, the Immortal Forger, The originally placed icon in his skill bar suddenly shone brightly, as if infused with some mysterious power. Mars, being hammered, was undergoing a strange transformation. Upgrade complete. Name: Silence of all things. Type: Skill. Quality: Immortal. Effect: Once activated, this skill can disable a large number of items of less than immortal quality within a certain range, with more potent effects on machinery. Cost: 10,000 spiritual energy. PS. With the effort of a group of people, we successfully discovered this terrifying weakness in the mechanical dimension and used all our strength to create a powerful force targeted at their vulnerabilities. Not bad. After upgrading to immortal quality, it directly turned into a wide-range silence. Su Chi was very satisfied. For many people, the various items they carry are key to their combat capabilities, and releasing this skill could directly produce an extremely terrifying effect, especially since there aren't many items of immortal quality. Su Chi was also in no hurry. He was waiting for the starship to gradually approach the chaotic rift, needing it to clear a path for him to grab the scissors. He wanted them all. At this moment, the energy bursting out of the starship gushed out violently. All the engines seemed to have been maximized, barely tearing out a path through the surrounding chaos that they could move forward on. At this time, Su Chi could also discern the limit of this starship and guess the approximate strength of the personnel inside. After all, the combination of technologies could easily surpass human strength and continuously stack up, creating a terrifying combat power that cannot be judged by ordinary standards. Of course, if they were of the same sequence, a fleet with the power of Sequence 6 and a strong individual of the 7th rank, the latter could easily tear through this fleet. Come on, you flying behemoth! Su Chi watched the opponent's massive figure, using full force to collide mightily with numerous terrifying chaotic flows, which had reached a terrifying level. The spatial tiers produced high-density energy causing countless powers capable of cutting through anything. Su Chi moved through the corridor, consuming spiritual energy as he approached the front. He was completely in another space, so he didn't need to worry about being swept away by these chaotic flows. But time was limited, and Su Chi also needed to find the right moment to strike. Looking at the clock hanging on the wall of the Holy Light corridor, he was genuinely cheering for the starship. Buddy, hurry up, stop dragging your feet. The beings inside the starship seemed dissatisfied with their slow speed, or perhaps it was because the terrifying chaotic flows were already tearing at the starship's energy, causing it to tremble shakily. Xiao Meng suddenly spoke. Master detected strong energy fluctuations. The starship seems to be preparing to make a move. Yes, it's about to make a decision that defies its ancestors and… Su Chi raised his head, looking surprised. In his line of sight, a large exclamation mark appeared, filled with red. The screen displayed, "Obtain the starship core, and you will receive a set of decryption codes." How long has it been since I last saw an exclamation mark? Su Chi mused with some emotion. It was actually a good thing not to see them often, because each appearance of an exclamation mark represented extreme danger, and with his personality, how could he resist checking out what this exclamation mark was all about? Is the starship core really the most important thing? Su Chi quietly watched everything and was also keeping track of the countdown. At that moment, the starship had already gathered energy. At the very top of the whole starship, chilling metal machinery appeared, and it was assembling something massive. Just the barrel alone was already hundreds of meters in diameter. The entire rear energy chamber was like a giant beast, coiled on top of the starship. In the next moment, terrifying energy was wildly converging. Su Chi also instantly felt the 7th rank power Xiao Meng talked about, vast and majestic, completely on a different scale from his own strength. He had witnessed the 7th rank up close in the world of the final home, where terrifying creatures of 7th rank appeared and brought overwhelming oppression. The power of 7th rank could be summarized in 2 words: city destruction. A city could easily be destroyed, and this starship's strongest strike was gathering nearly 5 million terrifying spiritual energy. Boom! The terrifying energy seemed to turn into the sun, emitting a brilliance that reached the pinnacle. The astonishing sound of the explosion seemed like it was going to destroy everything. At this moment, Su Qi also saw the spatial turbulence, which was forcibly blasted open by this terrifying starship cannon into a passageway. However, because of its massive size and huge energy consumption, the starship could not move quickly at this moment. But the other side clearly had a plan and was deploying. In the next moment, a figure suddenly burst out from the energy shield. Xiao Meng. Su Qi immediately called out. Xiao Meng naturally understood what Su Qi wanted. The opponent's body has no flesh components, completely composed of machinery, but at the same time, it has gathered strong spiritual energy. Preliminary judgment. The opponent's strength is 7th rank. Great, great, great. Su Qi's form also surged through the holy light corridor swiftly. Possessing spiritual energy but made up of machinery, finally encountered an existence from the divine machinery kingdom, and the attire of the opponent also had a distinct leader style. The opponent himself had entered the fray. Time is up. His form suddenly stomped towards the outside of the corridor. His entire person instantly dashed into the blasted channel, competing with that figure toward the goal. Oh! This entity's pupils suddenly widened in surprise. Then his pupils shrank, and killing intent burst out almost instantly like a cold blade. Bro! Hitching a ride on your wind. Su Qi didn't hesitate, raising his hand and materializing the 10-meter-long dark star, great sword, and chopping it towards him. Scram! The entity's face turned extremely grim, and a low growl came from his throat. How could he have expected that there would be someone here? He was so excited by the astonishing fluctuation that he didn't even check for nearby life forms. His arms spun wildly, with electromagnetic energy surging out. But in the next moment, puff! His entire person was directly cut through by Su Qi's greatsword, cutting off his arm through the energy shield. His expression was one of shock and suspicion. You! Su Qi, however, looked at him. Bro, does your voice come with auto-tune? And your arm? He saw that the opponent's arm was filled with numerous parts, complex precision machinery, and the key was, even though it was severed, it still had metal liquid rapidly repairing it, as if it was alive, healing itself. Though his arm had been severed, the adversary swiftly recovered, and his eyes gleamed with murderous intent. His voice was cold as a machine. You're seeking death. He reached out and waved his hand. In the air, numerous micro-level bombs exploded around Su Qi. In an instant, an energy aurora burst forth from his back, aiming directly at Su Qi. Indeed, it's a peculiar strength. Su Qi's eyes slightly brightened. He could see that the opponent's spiritual energy was connected to all the mechanical parts of his body. The machine parts seemed to be alive, much like the cybernetics of Night City, but they were in fact unknowably more advanced. The figure's face trembled slightly because, even after such a burst of force, the look in Su Qi's eyes was not one of fear but a disturbingly eager gaze, as if he was eagerly sizing up his body. Tui. Absolutely despicable. Boom! Yet Su Qi didn't dodge the fatal attack. Instead, he used the explosion's force to push forward, closing in on the feather scissors. After all, in the blink of an eye, the passage's duration was extremely short. Missing the chance to grab the scissors meant it would not be so easy to blast such a passage open again. The natives of this world seemed to have more tricks up their sleeves than I imagined. The figure's eyes displayed holographic effects as they analyzed Su Qi's body data and assessed the energy he had just unleashed. At least in his vision, he could instantly see all the flaws and weaknesses of his opponent. However, the figure was in no hurry and instead, his feet erupted with a mass of particles for propulsion, instantly catching up to Su Qi. Master, he's coming. Xiao Meng couldn't help but warn. I know. Su Qi noted the various powers unleashed by the other. His opponent had extraordinary special abilities, displaying a completely different sequence, something Su Qi was encountering for the first time. Boom! Explosions resounded through the midair. The air pulsed with a mass of lasers and ion blasts. Under the relentless killing intent, Su Qi raised his hand and summoned the magic cube domain to block it, then instantly reached the spatial rift. It was only a slit torn open by the scissors, but the surrounding energy was compressed to an extreme, making the whole space incredibly dense. Even without turbulence, he could feel the terrifying gravity around him. So this is God's scissors? Quite hard to obtain, Su Chi said without hesitation as he reached out for the scissors. But someone behind him wasn't about to let him do so, clenching his teeth with liquid metal ripples pulsing across his body, uttering a low growl. Dare to snatch my property. You're seeking death. As Su Chi extended his hand, the deadly strike suddenly came from behind him. The terrifying force made Su Chi raise his brow. He had to dodge out of the way. Boom! An energy particle cannon shot a fine laser line passing through his hair, but where it struck caused a massive explosion. Su Chi looked behind him. This deadly attack had been launched from the reactor core in the chest of the figure. Technology linked to strength. That last attack was far more lethal than an ordinary 7th rank. However, this didn't stop Su Chi. Boom! He raised his hand and numerous magic cube domains vibrated in unison, trapping the figure. Then, he directly grasped the scissors. Using the massive power of the starship, Su Chi successfully seized the opportunity in this gap and got his hands on the scissors. But in that instant, the equipment's information popped up before his eyes. Feather scissors. Quality? Effect? Cost? P.S. Greedy mortals, God's power is not so easy to wield. That's not necessarily true. I have too much of God's power within me. Without a second thought, Su Chi picked up the scissors. The scissors were incredibly heavy, and the rift in space could not close because of their opening and shutting, pressing down on him with an oppressive force from all directions. Simultaneously, other deep red windows also displayed content. Warning! Warning! If the player is swept into the spatial rift, they will be exiled into nihility. High probability of being torn into fragments by the various terrifying storms within. The spatial rift seemed like a terrifying monster lying in wait, seeking to annihilate him. All right, you're right. Su Chi decisively put down the scissors. They were not as easy to handle as he had imagined. Yet considering his previous experiences with obtaining divine artifacts, he was not overly surprised. At this very moment, an even greater killing intent came from his side. Native, put that down. The figure let out a fierce shout. He lunged at Su Chi with incredible speed, his body erupting with a prodigious energy from his astonishing arsenal of weapons. All right, it's yours. Su Chi unhesitatingly tossed the scissors to the figure. The opponent's eyes hardened, reaching out to grasp the scissors directly. But instantly, the space rifts around him surged forward to devour him. Is this a spatial, divine artifact? The figure's eyes seemed to detect the terrifying energy and aura, revealing an extremely greedy and excited look. Watching the spatial rifts appear around him, he still didn't let go. Su Chi naturally noticed that the other party recognized it instantly. This person's position must be quite high, otherwise, he would not have been able to identify its traits and quality at a glance. Boom, boom, boom. However, such forbidden power was naturally not something a 7th rank could withstand. Numerous space rifts appeared around him like a collapsing collapse, tearing at his body incessantly. Ah! Even with a mechanical body, it seemed to sense the approach of life and death. Hang in there, brother. Su Chi cheered from the side. I can see that these space rifts are appearing to seal the power of the cutting scissors, causing the collapse. Just hold on a bit longer, and they can be taken away. Damn natives! His mechanical pupils flickered with red light as he clenched his teeth and growled lowly. Although he realized this the moment he got his hands on the cutting scissors, it didn't change the fact that they were harming him. But this native had made a miscalculation. Starship! The starship rumbled in response, and a multitude of energy reflectors immediately displayed, with waves of superparticle waves crashing down, instantly enveloping the area, including Su Chi and the shadowy figure. They were all within it. Su Chi touched his chin, his gaze flickering as he looked at the starship above the sky dome. What strong power! Because a large number of particles actually provided sanctuary here, and this force was completely different. The figure gasped slowly, his bloodshot eyes filled with dangerous red light. This is the first time that while I'm plundering others, someone is trying to plunder me first. There's always a first time for everything. You'll get used to it after a few more times, Su Chi said. Is that so? He slowly regained his composure, his recently damaged body undergoing repair, with metal liquid particles restoring. Pity, without this first time. Next time I will thoroughly trample you and your world. The cutting scissors in his hand continued to tear open numerous small space rifts, but the power from the starship began collapsing its force step by step, maintaining an astonishing balance. D. The man's mechanical eye flashed with red light. Su Chi paused slightly, watching as the man came at him to kill. He seemed to have made a mistake. The core of the starship seemed to be more incredible than he had imagined. And this man, though made up entirely of mechanical parts, Su Chi had just noticed something different about him. Su Chi extended his finger. Xiao Meng, wasn't I right? Sometimes the data one detects can't be fully trusted. Like right now. He snapped his fingers and activated the skill, Silence of All Things. In that instant, centered around Su Chi, everything within a 10-kilometer radius suddenly grew dim. Whether it was the raging torrent of wind by his ears or the roaring of thunder and waves in the distance, at this moment, it all fell silent. And the figure before him, all the parts on his body crackled with noise, and the electric light flashed. His pounce turned into uncontrollable tumbling. At the same time, the starship in the sky dome seemed as if it had lost power. The energy shield protecting its exterior abruptly disbanded. A multitude of circuits were cut off. The numerous personnel inside exclaimed in surprise. What's going on? Why has everything malfunctioned? Start the backup system. Wake up the mechanical core. Startup failed. All connections to the mechanical core have malfunctioned. The figure stared dumbfounded at the scene, his body twitching as he fixed his gaze on Su Chi. What on earth did you do? Don't ask me. I'm a bit surprised too. Su Chi was also shocked. The effect was so strong, he merely wanted to interrupt the strong envelopment of the starship, but he hadn't expected to cause a system failure in the area. Was this the power of an immortal quality skill? Xiao Meng. Here. It's up to you now. Understood. Without any hesitation, Xiao Meng headed straight for the starship, which was now a mess. The starship systems displaying numerous vulnerabilities and weaknesses. Su Chi also watched as the figure before him was once again being torn apart by the numerous rifts created by the cutting scissors, his mechanical parts scattering on the ground with a fizzing noise. The man's pupils dilated, as if the red light was on the verge of turning into bloodshot eyes. You! Hello, Savatica. Su Chi greeted without getting closer. To be honest, fighting without any build-up isn't my style, after all. When you meet someone for the first time, you should say something, even if it's just to introduce yourself. The other person watched Su Chi talking to himself, feeling as if rage was about to burst forth. F***CK your mother. All right, F***CK your mother. My name is Su Buxian. Pleased to meet you. The figure trembled even more violently. With a snap, he was torn apart by a huge number of parts. The particle metal liquid couldn't keep pace with the repairs. His body had been shredded by the power of the scissors until only his neck remained. But still, this figure had not died. However, although the power of the scissors was already being retracted, it was still enough to annihilate him within a few breaths. And at that moment, Su Chi reached out to lift his head and at the same time grabbed the scissors. Then, with the power of Yellow Robe, he forcefully subdued it amidst the head's astonishment. His eyes widened. This guy, this burst of aura, the terrifying phantom that had just flickered in his sight. What the hell are you? His hoarse voice came from the mangled head. You're a bit weaker than I imagined. Plus you're not what I had guessed, Su Chi mused. He had just noticed this one was not a being of that dimension. Though the body was composed of machinery and related to the sequence, in reality, it was once a living being with flesh and blood. Let's go, let's head back. The head, unable to move, rasped a hoarse laugh. I've already sent people to kill your kin. You'll only return to a river of blood. 5 extermination squads. Oh, no, I meant we should check out your... Su Qi, holding him, leaped forward, heading straight towards the starship. Taking advantage of the core system's disconnection, Xiao Meng had gone all out to break through the peripheral system and directly open the entrance. He looked slightly delighted. The other party actually dared to enter his starship. Nearly 3,000 people on board, and various defensive weapons. Although currently disconnected and showing a strange state of malfunction, he could feel it was gradually recovering. Suddenly, because around Su Qi, a multitude of black shadows sprang up one after another. Each one exuded an aura above the 7th rank, and the murderous vibe. And not only that, the 3 individuals named Ganwen Sui next to Su Qi had also reappeared, their strength already stepping into the 7th rank. Of course, this was referring to their spiritual energy. Being complex special entities, their path of sequence had not yet formed, and they purely relied on accumulating spiritual energy to enhance their combat strength. Meanwhile, the elite of the Shadow Army had increased from over 200 people to 400. Sect Leader, awaiting your command. You have 5 minutes. The starship will be back to normal. Everyone, charge into the captain's room with full force. Understood. The Black Shadow Corps began to move quick. With Xiao Meng apart, the head roared in anger. Trash! Useless trash. This starship is such a powerful creation. Yet the people in control seem somewhat mismatched. Su Qi looked towards the head. Do you have any idea? I have your F***king. Impolite. Su Qi, listening to the information from Xiao Meng, although she had sensed some higher-level terrifying intelligence, which was the core of the starship, she found infiltrating the starship's other control systems to be extremely fast. Master, found it. The core is in the deepest part of the starship. This core is very dangerous, possessing mysterious powers that are completely inscrutable. It shouldn't be something that these people with their power should be able to possess. And for Xiao Meng, Su Qi suddenly sensed an instability in Xiao Meng's voice. A few minutes later, Su Qi followed Xiao Meng's guidance and found his way deep into the starship. With layers of protection, and relying on Su Qi's question mark information, he quickly peeled off the codes on top. This head was shockingly astonished. This starship had cost a fortune, utilizing the top-tier materials and technology currently available to him, and no world could counter it at the moment. And the man in front of him, opening the door was like coming back to his own home. He wasn't even that smooth and still needed to scan his face. A look of extreme suspicion and unease flickered through his eyes. Where are you going? Su Qi slapped his head. Stop babbling. He spoke softly. At first, I thought you were from the Divine Machinery Kingdom, but now it seems that's not the case. And the head was a bit confused. What Divine Machinery Kingdom? Su Qi was already looking towards a massive structure constructed of a large amount of plasma. This was precisely the site where massive energy was being extracted. And within, there was a blue core interlacing various types of energy. It was very small, about the size of a fist, yet it possessed a vast aura like a fire seed. Su Qi spotted the question mark at once. Damaged core of the Divine Machinery Kingdom. The last fire seed after the Divine Machinery Doomsday. The object Terminator is searching for. Su Qi's eyes slightly moved. The question marks he now saw were providing increasingly accurate information. He actually already felt it was highly related to his golden finger. Like now, he could skip many irrelevant question marks and directly found the crucial information, of course. In exchange, after these 3 critical pieces of information appear, more information about this object would need at least an hour before he could continue probing. And the information he saw now was sufficient. Xiao Meng, can you probe this? Unable to do so, Xiao Meng was already somewhat disordered at the moment, as if shocked by the terrifying data therein. Her voice intermittent and robotic. By a common explanation, The amount of useful information an intelligence possesses determines its strength. Super Dream Protocol currently has only 1/10,000th the information of a complete world, and the executed standard unit here is based on a world just entering the Enlightenment phase. Su Qi nodded lightly. He naturally heard Xiaomeng mention this. Although the growth rate of the Super Dream Protocol was extremely fast, the scale of a world was vast and enormous. Even a single grain of sand held an astonishing information value. At the moment, Super Dream Protocol has only reached 1/10,000th of a standard world unit. And that thing? Su Qi looked towards the blue core, unable to probe. If ignoring the margin of error, just based on the weak gravitational field it radiates alone, it already amounts to thousands of standard world units. Su Qi's eyes glowed. My goodness! Just the mere outside radiance had already reached such a terrifying order of magnitude. No wonder Xiaomeng had been saying from the beginning that this was a special new power that could not be detected. So the question was, how such an extraordinarily terrifying core was obtained by someone of the 7th rank. Su Qi lifted up the head. My dear Captain, how did you come by this thing? If you talk willingly, I can still offer you a way to live. You? The other party clenched his teeth. All right, since you don't seem to talk, I will have to use some tougher methods. Oh? What the hell? I haven't said anything yet. Under his wide-open eyes, Su Qi, with a smile, directly launched Fingertip Universe and dragged him into illusion space. Simple questioning, a waste of time, and too easy to dodge the heavy topics. Using Fingertip Universe was instead the most efficient and comprehensive interrogation technique. However, this time Su Qi didn't want to do it himself. This is, in the illusion crafted by Fingertip Universe, he saw a serene maritime highway, city, and some fishmen walking around nearby. His eyes were somber and wary, but as a raider for many years, his ironclad, indifferent nature had already placed life and death aside. Illusion realm, huh? No matter what weird place this is, or whatever you want to do to me, I'm not going to tell you anything. Su Qi clapped his hands. Good. I admire your spirit. But don't worry. I'm not good with violence or tortures. Just brought you here to chat with someone. He carried the other's head, walked to a little town in the sea. Near a pineapple bun and giant-like building, there was a half-domed, earth-colored roof. Patrick, wearing pajamas, rubbed his eyes. SpongeBob? Is that you? SpongeBob has gone to work. Su Qi handed over the head. This is your new friend. Play with him for a few days. Patrick looked at the head, his eyes a bit wide. It's an evil robot warrior. No, it's the friendly new resident of the town. All right, you guys have fun. I'm off. The head was somewhat puzzled, but sneered as it seemed he could regain his body soon, and once he kills this guy he would break directly through here, directly connecting to the core. Su Qi's consciousness returned from the illusion to reality, tossing the head to the hands of a shadow soldier nearby. Master, what did you do to him? I didn't do anything. Su Qi paused, handed him over to a more powerful interrogator. Since Patrick had followed Su Qi, he'd been considering how to stabilize his mental state, because once that guy went berserk, he wouldn't recognize anyone, creating a bloody, gruesome incident in the past. So, Su Qi decided to combine the magical conch, the Fingertip Universe, and the ritual from the Book of Knowledge to create an illusion realm that restored Patrick's hometown. Even though it was all an illusion, perhaps it was enough for Patrick. Master, if the other party is a mechanical life, Xiaomeng gave a reminder, there should be no mental harm. All information cannot be obtained through threats, torture, or similar means. It can only be decrypted through technical force. That's the terrifying aspect of the divine machinery kingdom. All spiritual power damage is useless against them. Su Qi said, don't worry, firstly, he's not some mechanical life. Although his body is fully mechanical, his brain is still made of flesh and blood. Secondly, sometimes, mental harm doesn't necessarily require too many complexities, great strength or means. Just words will do. Let's have a chat with them for a day in the illusion first. According to the flow of time in the illusion realm, it's about a minute, and I believe by then the transformation will be successful. If they still haven't learned their lesson, we can just extend the time. If the other party wants to make a move, they'll have to fend for themselves. Su Qi wasn't in a hurry, listening to Xiao Meng's report. Gan Wansue and his men had already successfully fought a bloody path and stormed into the commander's chamber. So, you're telling me that this entire starship can achieve such a level of power just by utilizing the energy emanating from the core? Xiao Meng paused. Yes. And the energy-draining zone established by this starship is also very inefficient. Now that the core's energy radiation and protection are lost, I can attempt to invade the opposing commander's chamber. Go for it, it's all yours. Everything before was because of this mechanical core, and now that it has been disrupted by their interference, all connections have failed. Isn't this their chance? Su Qi didn't approach that blue core. Such a terrifying object, definitely extraordinary, was simply treated as an inexhaustible energy source by the commander. At this very moment, Su Qi's eyebrows twitched slightly, because, in the illusion realm, he was hiding beneath a mud pit, desperately shouting, "Help! Don't keep me here! Please! I want to leave! At any cost!" Su Qi glanced over. Geez, this guy's eyes were filled with bloodshot veins. His hair, previously sleek and shiny, was now disheveled and tangled, and his face was covered with fear and madness. "Quick! They're almost upon me. I can already hear their footsteps and the grating laughter. Save me!" Su Qi muttered. "Looks like the effect is better than expected. I don't even need to trouble myself thinking of various methods. And Patrick, he's having a blast on his own. Alright, decided. Create a psychic skill, Patrick's psychological consultation room. From now on, this will be one of my strongest spiritual power skills." Su Qi's consciousness descended once more, appearing in front of the commander, crouching before him. "My friend, how was your day trip experience at Mystic Castle?" You. The commander, seemingly on the verge of a mental breakdown, murmured as if he had faced some extreme terror or inhuman torment, shakily saying, "Get me out of here! Whatever it is, I'll tell you everything. Just don't let me contact those few perverted beings ever again." Su Qi. "No, you're not allowed to say that about Brother Haixing apologized to me." His pupils dilated. He murmured desperately, "They're all lunatics, all lunatics." 20 minutes later, Su Qi returned to reality. "Master, did you make any discoveries?" "Of course." Su Qi snapped his fingers. "Things aren't really that complicated. This guy used to be an ordinary combat personnel in a raider group. In one battle, the entire raiding group was disastrously defeated and wiped out, including him. However, due to the reason of his sequence, even with just a head remaining, he didn't die. Originally abandoned in the nihility, if he couldn't find a world to land in a short time, he would inevitably meet death as his spiritual energy ran out. But at that time," Su Qi paused, "he witnessed a miracle. According to the image he displayed, it seemed like there was a terrible super explosion from another dimensional space. An endlessly brilliant light bloomed as if that vast space was completely destroyed. Then, this core appeared. It smashed through several huge stars at an incredibly fast speed, and he was undoubtedly lucky. By the time the core's speed and power dropped to a freezing point, he managed to find it." Su Qi looked at the bewildered head still muttering to itself. "And with the power from above, he successfully transformed his own body and survived. Moreover, he discovered that any machinery, any parts that came close to that core, would be assembled into high-quality machines, equipment, weapons, prosthetics, and so on. Therefore, he frantically gathered spirit coins and, in just a few years, built this starship, gathered a large number of followers, plundered special treasures of various worlds, and with the power of the core, assembled and transformed into more powerful weapons." Su Qi looked towards the blue core. Pity. He never knew what a terrifying, extraordinary treasure he had stumbled upon. His current behavior is like using destruction-level energy to boil water for instant noodles. However, it doesn't matter now. It's my turn to try. Outside the special area, the intense battle was nearing its end, with strange mechas, amazing equipment with explosive power, and strong potential. This extermination squad was extremely powerful. Still, they misjudged the strength of this world. With the desperate and vigorous battle from many and the outburst of Bai Yilan and Jiang Ji, they finally shattered all these men. The dead died, and the escapees fled. However, even if they wanted to flee back to their mother ship, the old professor did not give them that chance. He had been covering the base because the real strength of the opponent was that terrifying starship. Even if they captured these raiders, the expressions of everyone were still not relaxed. The person forced to kneel on the ground sneered, lifting his head to stare at everyone with cold eyes, without any fear. "It seems Captain overestimated our power. You're stronger than the predicted data. However," he calmly sneered, "our starship, wherever it goes, brings unstoppable destruction. No one can rival. Maybe you can survive this, but can you prevent the destruction of your world?" Jiang Ji, swearing, wanted to go over and punch him. Damn it, those words are really infuriating. The bearded man, however, looked solemn, because the other side was right. Once that starship launches a destruction-level strike, even if they can evade and survive, the cities and ordinary people of this world can't. That was the truly formidable entity they feared. Duan clenched his fists tightly, feeling both anger and helplessness. The forsaken children of God, now still in recovery and growth. Any external enemy appeared like a heavy hammer, capable of smashing them to pieces easily. Boom! 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 An explosive sound of wind suddenly surged. The man lifted his head and looked at the distance, smiling. Here it comes! A vast black shadow, emerging from the far special area of the sky dome, burst through masses of dark clouds and thunder, arriving so as to darken the skies. Everyone's eyes narrowed to the extreme, hearts sinking. Their expressions grew even darker and heavier. For the first time, they saw this starship and they officially understood what kind of massive entity it was. The roaring wind vibrated, blowing against everyone. Prepare for battle. Duan's eyes darkened as he stood solemnly before the crowd. They were not without a chance, for having inherited the temple, he naturally had a trump card he could use. But once he used the temple's strength, the price would be divinity bursting forth like a trace. The entire world would be exposed to the outside. After all, this was a world owned by a god, and soon more covetous enemies would appear. This was also their dilemma. Thus, Duan, along with a series of loyal subordinates, were extremely eager to enhance the strength of all the world's citizens, because only by becoming powerful themselves could they face external enemies without fear. Here they come, Captain. The captured crew, too, raised their eyes in excitement. As raiders, their own strength was not important. What mattered was their cruel hearts that aligned with the captain's, and their loyalty that made them useful to him. Their strength also all came from the mechanical equipment created by the captain, allowing them to plunder other worlds and indulge in the pleasure of killing. And at this moment, everyone was ready for anything. Bai Yilan and Jiang Ji were even prepared to take out their saved trump cards, as they were also major contributors to the nightmare-level instance, and although not as impressive as Su Qi, they too had formidable rewards that could serve as an ace in the hole. Su Buxian should be doing all right in that boundary, Jiang Ji said, gazing at the starship that roared closer. In his hand, he held a bow with the pattern of an ancient beast on it, an awe-inspiring weapon ready to be drawn and released at any moment. As for Brother Su, he should be fine. He may seem a bit offbeat, but he's actually quite composed inside. If he encounters an unbeatable foe, he'll find a way to avoid it, Bai Yilan said, extending 5 fingers adorned with magic rings that greatly enhanced his magic, even allowing him to use taboo techniques that had previously been beyond his grasp. A flicker of hope surged in his heart, feeling like he could truly regain his strength. Obviously, Bai Yilan understood that all of this had been brought about by Su Buxian. After all, though this instance was extremely lethal, it also came with extraordinary rewards far surpassing those of an ordinary instance. And the one who could complete the main quest of this world, was only Su Buxian. The situation, however, had now changed. The immense starship had reached right above their heads, making it very difficult to combat with mere human power. "They're here!" The starship emitted a rumbling noise as it plummeted. The air was compressed to the extreme, the fierce wind nearly preventing everyone from opening their eyes. Even hundreds of meters from the ground, the surrounding earth was already whipped into a great dust storm. Duen looked up, his hand raised high, ready to unleash the temple's strength, and roared as he performed the movements. "Everyone, lend me your strength." He could gather the strength of all the children of the gods, unleashing the true strength of the temple. And at that moment, everyone was ready to act. But their bodies trembled as a swift descent of a particle storm appeared out of nowhere, and the terrifying gravity field pinned them helplessly to the ground. Gravity field? Only by Yilin, Jiangji, Duen, and the old professor were still standing, their bodies obviously feeling oppressed, their movements greatly slowed. Damn it! Duen quickly used his divinity to create a sanctuary around his people, releasing them from their binds. "Be careful, here it comes again." The starship spewed another streak of light. All of a sudden, the intense gravity field around everyone vanished, and they found themselves floating weightlessly in the air. "The gravity's gone. I can't catch my breath." "Don't panic," Bai Yilin commanded, his fingers gesturing magic. Those unable to leverage themselves were caught by a rain of ravens dropping from the sky. At least with a place to land and leverage, they could move. Suspended midair, they would become sitting ducks. However, boom! The starship once again emitted a purple glow. "What's this time? We can't dodge it." The thunderous purple light exploded in midair. Everyone's expression changed drastically as all the weapons and equipment on their bodies were suddenly sucked away by a powerful force. If they didn't let go, in the absence of gravity, they'd be pulled along. "Wait! Here it comes again. It's a light ball. Is it an attack?" "No!" A tremendous burst of light exploded before everyone's eyes. "It's a damn flashbang." And it wasn't just an ordinary visual flash, it also came with full sensory disruption. Tears welled up in Jiangji's eyes from the flash as he covered them and shouted angrily, "What is this crap? If you want to fight, fight directly. Using these thuggish things is completely shameless." Then, the starship began to unleash an array of bizarre technologies. Boundary oscillation bombs, tornado creation fields. Everyone was becoming numb. Even Duen looked up at the starship somewhat bewilderedly. His divinity had hardly burst out just now, because he did not feel the presence of a lethal intent from the starship. "What on earth is going on?" he murmured. And the captured members of the Annihilation Team, though also floating mid-air, boasted huskily, "See, you natives, under absolute power, you are nothing but ants to be toyed with." At that moment, the armaments of the starship finally came into everyone's view, and the heavy, bulky silver gun barrels were gathering an intense blue glow. A lethal aura was condensing, the screeching sound of particle gathering, thunderous and increasingly piercing. They hooked up the corners of their mouths and laughed, looking at this scene. "And now, it seems the captain has had enough fun." They had a cold smile on their faces. "Next, it's your time to die." As soon as their words ended, an annihilation energy beam plummeted from the starship straight toward the ground below. "Be careful," the bearded man roared. He was just about to kick away the people around him because the energy beam, though deadly, appeared to have a small range, and it seemed to be aimed for precision strikes. And among those around him were important figures like Duen and the old professor. Naturally, he needed to ensure they survived first and foremost. "You kicked a bit too early." Jiangji suddenly spoke up, staring blankly at the distance. "Because..." The annihilation energy beam enveloped the captured combat personnel, and as their eyes widened with disbelief and fear, their bodies already started vaporizing at breakneck speed. Not even a whisper could be heard. Just like how the big hole on the ground instantly dissolved into powder, they vanished in tandem. Did it miss? The bearded man's eyes bulged. Do you think it's your homemade slingshot that can miss? That freaking can't miss. Jiang Ji couldn't help but complain. If it didn't miss. Bai Yilin raised his head. He already saw a halo appearing under the starship, its light reflecting on the ground, forming a gravitation channel. A figure slowly appeared in everyone's sight and was brought down to the ground. Su Qi looked at the group with narrowed eyes, full of surprise and silence, and greeted with a smile. I've arrived a bit late. Are you all okay? The bearded man stuttered. Why did you come down from the starship? It's a long story. It starts from the ancient practice of abdication, where a ruler who felt inadequate would cede power to a more virtuous and talented individual. Su Qi paused for a moment. And this captain is a staunch follower of the abdication tradition. Thus he entrusted me with this responsibility. Everyone. Jiang Ji snapped back to his senses, ignoring the story, and said cautiously, let me give you a plausible one. You're a captured hostage, now bound up in all kinds of high-tech dangerous goods, and you're threatened to come down and negotiate with us. Su Qi raised his thumb. Genius. So I am right? Go sit at the kids' table. Su Qi extended his hand towards the starship. Proceed to cruise. Under everyone's shocked gazes, the starship burst out with intense energy, accelerating suddenly, obediently rising into the sky in response to the command. Jiang Ji. He couldn't help but grab Su Qi's shoulder, excitedly saying, Bro, you have to tell me how you did that. And can I try it too? I've always dreamt of piloting a starship. Even if it's not a starship, a mecha like theirs would do. The former starts from the ancient tradition of abdication. I got that part. What about the latter? The latter is a privilege only for members of the Hustlers. Then I'll join, Jiang Ji said excitedly. Bai Yiling. This guy has been hesitating and struggling for a month, not so easily accepting my invitation. Now just like that, he agrees in one freaking sentence? Principles seem to fall apart in the face of dreams. It's possible, Su Qi paused. But you have to pay the fee first, 2,000 spirit coins, it's tradition. Damn you, do you think this is the Superpower Association? Charging money. What kind of organization has such a tradition? Jiang Ji's eyes widened, suddenly turning to Bai Yilin. You didn't pay, did you? Bai Yiling. I'm going to see if anyone is injured. The bearded man, covered in dust, walked over with a somewhat blackened face. I'm not going to ask all those ins and outs. I just want to ask what all those various strengths that just occurred mean. Duan and the old professor, among others, all turned their attention over, having just experienced a bombardment of all sorts of strange and wonderful technologies. Su Qi, with an impassive expression, said, I was just unfamiliar with the starship's function. The corners of everyone's mouths involuntarily twitched. I'd believe anything but that. Seriously, if it weren't for the fact that this guy was the honorable lifetime savior, if it weren't for their inability to beat him, if it weren't for the divine son and the old professor holding him in high regard, they would have gone up and beaten him by now. The old professor stepped forward with a concerned expression. What are their origins? As a priest, naturally, he was more concerned about the long-term implications. Don't worry, Su Qi spoke lightly. There's no one backing them. This sudden crisis has been temporarily resolved. Duan let out a sigh of relief. That's good to hear. Additionally, Su Qi checked the time. There's still a week left before we reach the coordinates. Are you all prepared? Do you understand where the coordinates will take us? Duan nodded. The professor and I have tried our best to hide any signs of the temple's presence, masquerading as an ordinary world when nearing it. And we're also training a large number of personnel with all our might. Brother Su, your Starfire potions have been widely disseminated and are very effective. Ordinary people have at least a 30% physical fitness boost, and our overall strength has increased. This was undoubtedly a godsend, allowing them to nurture more potential users. As for those coordinates, although I don't know what place it is, Duan said in a grave tone, The compass of fate tells me it's where the guardian god lies dormant. Su Qi's eyebrows twitched slightly. To be honest, facing all manner of unknowns and the lurking nearby formidable foes, the 1 month they had was far too short, and he too was using various means to strengthen himself and all the strengths of the hustlers. But truth be told, the latter's progress was far too slow. After all, Xiaomeng was also limited in ability, being in the Enlightenment period. But now, Su Qi gazed at the starship concealed by the atmospheric layer of the sky dome. With the mechanical core in hand, things could be different. By the way, Bai Yilan spoke up, the other connected world still maintains the Ripple portal. It should dissipate soon. Should we make contact? After all, the world they were in was a movable fragment and would naturally break the connection after a brief encounter. That world, Su Qi said lightly, is just an ordinary, inquisitive world still exploring the outside, and in a state of knowledge-seeking. Then we won't make contact. The divine son Duan considered for a moment, not just because it was of no value, but because they were still engulfed in a wildfire, and making contact would only harm them. You don't need to. But Su Qi calmly looked at the ripples. I'll go and leave them something. It was a world that had been struck down and devastated. He didn't need to do much. Just leave behind the newborn starfire to give them hope to enter the sequence. Land of extreme evil. Someone was standing at the top of a high building, looking over the center of the land of extreme evil, watching the vast array of space fragments drawn in around it, almost like a star ring encircling it. The center of the land of extreme evil seems to have only a very small world, but it's like a black hole, attracting a massive amount of space fragments and forming a unique outer world. And there are many life forms settling in. In the past 6 months, it has become a place comparable to Chaotic City, a hub of trade, struggle, adventure, conquest, and so on. But what caused all this are the infinite values of the land of extreme evil, drawing in life from the 10,000 realms. The man had a hint of condescension in his voice. Behind him stood others dressed in ancient attire. He slowly smiled arrogantly, a flash of divinity gleaming on him. Then, as the noble divine son, I shall take all this. Not just him. A large number of ancient descendants were also arriving. At the same time, apart from the vast number of life forms, players were also landing in this place. The saga of the extremely evil world was officially unfolding. Su Qi stood deep within the starship, gazing at the blue core before him, surrounded by various sensors, a multitude of pipes connected to it, carrying streams of astonishing particles. Every sensor around him, the dense mass of large screens, were all displaying various kinds of data. And the one in control of all this was Xiaomeng. How's the progress? Su Qi asked. Xiaomeng displayed the figure of a little girl on a large screen. Master, with the enhancement of this mechanical core, my learning and evolution speed increased by nearly 100-fold. At the same time, progress in other research and development areas are also continuously improving. Moreover, I can parse a fraction of the content from the information torrent within this core. The so-called information torrent. It was Su Qi's nickname for the terrifyingly vast information encompassed within the mechanical core, a vastness of another dimension entirely. And Xiaomeng was able to parse through it, seeming to gain access to the divine machinery kingdom's blueprints, technology, and so forth. That was one aspect. Another was that it could be used as an unlimited energy source, driving the energy of the starship, yet not even 1,000th of the energy it radiated on its own. Thirdly, over the last few days, Su Qi had gained a deeper understanding of it, connecting it to the keyword question marks he had seen previously. He arrived at a terrifying conclusion. The divine machinery kingdom has been destroyed. This was a place with as many gods as the present world, just an independently existing dimension with a much smaller volume. Such a powerfully terrifying divine country, yet it has been destroyed. Su Qi's pupils reflected the blue light. And furthermore, Su Qi even knew who exactly destroyed the divine country. It was the being known as the Terminator. Su Qi didn't know whether this was an organization or an individual, but either would be extremely dangerous and terrifying. And this core was the spark of the divine machinery kingdom. If his guess was correct, the being responsible for the destruction was searching for it, as probably were the survivors of the divine machinery kingdom. But none of that was important. Once it was in Su Qi's hands, it became his personal property. "All right then, keep up the good work," said Su Qi without delay. Although Xiao Meng's progress was crucial, there was no need for urgency in the immediate moment. This starship before him was built by the previous captain, who had exhausted great effort and high costs in materials and blueprints. In reality, however, that fellow had taken a completely wrong path. Only by parsing the mechanical core, using the authentic blueprints from the divine machinery kingdom, would it qualify as a true super starship. Su Qi soon returned to the ground. The Starfire potion had been widely distributed, and a large amount of data had been gathered. In these few days, Su Qi hadn't continued to visit the special trial land. After all, he had quietly taken away everything there. Spatial rifts will slowly heal under the laws of the world. The chaotic flows that lasted for countless ages have been quieted by me. They should be quite pleased. Duan? Su Qi quickly arrived at the headquarters of Organization X, met with the old professor and brewed a pot of tea for him, teaching him chess, occasionally stopping by to play a couple of games. While playing chess and drinking tea, they could chat. Of course, Su Qi naturally didn't just chat idly. Although the old professor was at most 7th rank now, he was still a distinguished priest with a wealth of past information. And most importantly, he was much more simple than the cunning and sly yellow-robed priest. As long as no taboos are touched, the priest would share all he knew without reservation. It's been over half a year now, and Su Qi had no idea how far old Huang had developed, leading the many chosen from the anxious land from all worlds. The old professor lifted his cup and took a sip of the robust tea. "Must say, this drink called tea is quite delightful." He looked down at the board. "And this chess game you taught me, it has its own pleasures of offense and defense. It's just..." The old professor paused. "I've lost every time so far." Su Qi smiled. In this respect, he almost never lost. He often didn't need any other means to win easily. Of course, except for the Master of Destruction, her learning ability was too terrifying. Even in her youthful form, she could suppress him in just a few games. "Professor, we must be nearing that coordinate by now," Su Qi said to the deep-in-thought old professor. "Have we found anything?" The old professor's brows moved slightly. "That's right, as we approached the range of the coordinate, the propulsion of the world's ship suddenly ceased, and now it seems like a gravitational pull from deep space, drawing our world closer. As for what we've seen," the old professor shook his head. "The void ahead cannot be clearly explored yet, but with the power of the world ship, we are capturing nearby objects. So far, only some debris, nothing of value." Su Qi nodded slightly, contemplating. They were now nearing the land of extreme evil. Although he wasn't sure of Paradise's progress, Su Qi believed the players should have entered that place before them. And moreover, in this world, specific information about the land of extreme evil was unattainable. It feels a bit like the blind leading the blind, but it seems the Destiny Compass knows better than to rush in blindly. For now, the Destiny Compass's guidance had stopped the world ship from approaching further, and just this traction force from the void was enough to know the dangers ahead. And recently, the starship also sensed energy ripples around it. Although sparse and emanating from the depths of the void, their mere appearance indicated various battles had erupted. From nothing to something had already proven that they were converging on a chaotic place. And just at this moment, the old professor was deep in thought, his eyebrows furrowed, pondering the chess game that had driven him to a dead end. Suddenly, his face twitched, and he seemed slightly stunned. Su Qi, interested, said, "What's wrong, Professor? Have you had a sudden insight at Dragonfield? Planning a turnaround to win your first victory?" "No, there's news from the Divine Sun. Something else has been captured." The old professor took a deep breath. "And this time, it's a person." Su Qi's expression did not show surprise because Xiao Meng had already informed him before Duan passed the message to the old professor. A few minutes later, Su Qi and the old professor appeared simultaneously in a city where core members of Organization X had already appeared in the area, using various stringent protections to seal it off. No ordinary people were allowed near, and, of course, many people couldn't resist looking inside, but no one could see anything. How about it? Where is this person? The old professor asked with some concern, not wanting to cause too much of a stir. In the big pit up ahead, people cleared a pathway. The bearded man walked over and said, "This person fell straight from the atmosphere, but luckily, landed in a vacant area of the urban district, not injuring anyone." The old professor looked ahead. This was a construction site. A building only halfway completed had been directly destroyed. A large crater, created by a massive impact, had appeared on the ground. A figure lay inside. "We haven't approached immediately because the opponent's strength and aura are not those of an ordinary sequencer," the bearded man said gravely. Being able to fall from such a height and not die indicated not only that the opponent was strong but also possessed defensive artifacts. The old professor's eyes shifted slightly. He could tell with his keen eyesight and gently said, "You were right not to approach. He has automatic retaliatory defenses, possessing at least the lethality of a high 7th rank. Duan's eyes intensified. High 7th rank? He had already understood the classifications of the sequence path and knew that even within the 7th rank, there could be enormous gaps. A high 7th rank would have at least several 100,000 spiritual energy and could easily annihilate an ordinary 7th rank. Not to mention such a protective lethal attack. The bearded man was also somewhat relieved. It was fortunate they hadn't let people rashly approach. He said gravely, "I don't know if the other party is a friend or foe. My suggestion is to call back the defenders who are out on missions. First, let's keep this place surrounded. Brother Su, see if you want to call over your 2 companions." "Who said that? Go away." Su Qi looked at the hole. "The hierarch of the Hustlers sect is already here. Do we need to make it so complicated?" "Duan, let me see what's going on." Su Qi jumped directly down the pit and then appeared next to the figure. He looked at the person in front of him. The person's body bore many injuries that were quite severe. However, the power emanating from his body and the somber aura indicated that he indeed possessed extraordinary capabilities. Su Qi reached out his hand. "Careful, Brother Su." Duan immediately warned, his divinity sensing the emergence of a lethal threat, even a terrifying phantom appearing from something on the person's body. Smack! Su Qi slapped his hand down and firmly held the person's power. "Duan." Then, grabbing the person's shoulders with both hands, he said, "Buddy, hey, time to wake up." Those present watched Su Qi shake the severely injured outsider like one would shake a milk tea, falling into silence. Su Qi had actually planned to use a healing potion to treat the injuries, but upon descending, he discovered there was no need. The person's injuries were slowly healing themselves. Although far from fully healed, death had been staved off. At this moment, the person also regained some consciousness, his voice hoarse and weak. "Stop shaking me. I'm going to die." Su Qi said, "It's good you're awake. But before you passed out, deactivate the power you were using first, or it's going to be difficult for us to treat you here." The other party could no longer speak but merely nodded lightly before fainting again. Su Qi also removed the silence of all things silence effect that he had just activated, after confirming the dissipation of the other party's strength. He then lifted the man and jumped out of the pit. "Give this brother some healing. His power has already been removed. Also, notify me when he wakes up." Duan nodded. "Okay, Brother Su." The old professor looked at his own divine son and helplessly shook his head. The divine son now seemed like a subordinate of Su Buxian. However, it did not matter, as by his old priest's intuition, he felt increasingly that Su Buxian was no ordinary person, as even their guardian god seemed to have a deep impression of him. At this moment, Su Qi had returned to the starship outside the atmosphere. "Xiao Meng, what did you find just now?" Xiao Meng's voice reached Su Qi's ears. Master, using the starship's probe function, I have discovered a vast expanse of chaos in the distance, and traces of other powers have increased. Su Qi nodded. That must be where the land of extreme evil is located. Also, Master, I have successfully decoded a blueprint from the mechanical core. Xiao Meng directly uploaded it to the Super Dream Protocol. What is this? Su Qi looked at the blueprint displayed. Zero material ultra-high mobility shoes. How are they? I still need to gather materials and produce a sample for testing. Please leave this to me. Xiao Meng sounded quite confident. I can definitely make it within a day. All right then. Su Qi was not in a hurry. Only after obtaining the finished product, he would know how powerful this item produced from the mechanical core truly was. After making some arrangements, the extraterrestrial visitor woke up, and the surrounding X-organization ability users had been dispersed, with only a few people including Su Qi remaining here. After all, the old professor did not want unfamiliar outsiders to understand this world. They would try to behave like an ordinary native world as much as possible. You're awake. Su Qi looked at the man wrapped in bandages. Opening his eyes somewhat confusedly, congratulations. The surgery was very successful. You've just given birth to a baby weighing 9 pounds and 6 ounces. His already chaotic mind became even more muddled. It took him a while to regain his senses. Where is this? Su Qi paused for a moment. This is our world. You fell from the Sky Dome. Are you perhaps an alien? Alien. His pupils somewhat cleared, revealing a trace of resigned smile. Is this just an ordinary enclosed world? Su Qi blinked. You haven't answered me yet? He still spoke very politely. Sorry, just didn't expect to survive. You can consider me an alien, but rest assured, I have no ill intentions. Yet, Su Qi shook his head. Whether you have ill intentions is for us to decide. First tell us what happened. Why did you enter our world? The man sighed. It was indeed troublesome to explain, as the native enclosed world knew little about many things of the present world. All right, let me sort it out. He paused again. Also to take a moment, my shoulder hurts a lot, and my previously fuzzy consciousness told me that something seemed to be attacking me. Su Qi did not bat an eyelid. I'm not sure about that. After about 10 seconds, the figure pondered slightly and then said, First of all, I did not intrude into your world. Rather, your world crashed into me. Of course, you need not be puzzled. He looked into the distance. There's a place that possesses endless mighty power. Your world was drawn here by this mighty power without your knowledge. And this place it is called. The figure uttered 4 words. The land of extreme evil. Su Qi listened to these 4 words. His expression did not change much, but his heart paused slightly. Indeed, his prediction was not wrong. They had now arrived at the land of extreme evil. This was also where the curtain rose on the extremely evil world incident. This figure slowly looked up at the Sky Dome, his tone somewhat complex. This is a dangerous place, yet it is filled with endless opportunities. Countless life forms come here seeking chances. There is a great deal of chaos, strife, and survival of the fittest. Although I came here a few months ago, I was ambushed because of the various dangers here. That's why I fell here. He gave a somewhat helpless, bitter smile. That's about it, and let me also introduce myself. My name is Long Sun, just an ordinary adventurer. Su Qi paused. He gazed imperceptibly at the person in front of him. Although the other party spoke sincerely and naturally, Su Qi could still effortlessly see from above his head the information. He hid and lied about some things. Sigh. This world is too complicated, filled everywhere with lies. When will people's character catch up to their own level? When will a kind and honest person appear? Su Qi extended his hand. All right, Mr. Long Sun. My name is Su Ke, also just an ordinary citizen of this world. Long Sun shook hands somewhat blankly with Su Qi, then paused to sense something. Your world has never had contact with the outside, but it seems that your inherent strength is quite good. He had already sensed many 7th rank and ordinary rank individuals around, although different worlds often have different forms of demonstrating power. However, in reality, by the aura emitted from the spiritual energy each person harbored, he could gauge their sequence strength. It looks like you two have the ability to make contact with the outside world and compete for opportunities in the land of extreme evil. The door was gently pushed open, and both the old professor and Duen also walked in at this moment. The old professor softly said, "It is very dangerous to venture rashly into unexplored deep waters." Long Sun looked at the two of them. He knew that the strongest auras just now belonged to these two. He politely nodded slightly. "It seems that you two are the leaders of this world. You make a good point, but I must say this is not up to you," Long Sun calmly spoke. "You may think of the land of extreme evil as a star. All worlds drawn here will orbit around it, forming a star ring. The only thing you can do is to head to the land of extreme evil and seek a way to escape this star ring. Otherwise, you will eventually be shattered into space fragments and assimilate into the land of extreme evil, becoming its nourishment." The expressions of the old professor and Duen were somewhat solemn. They could not distinguish the truth from what was said, but this kind of matter could be understood with a bit of research, so there was no need to lie. Thus, the situation was indeed dangerous, but this was also their destination in the quest to liberate their god's coordinates, so they had to brave the dangers. At this moment, Su Chi spoke to himself. "Is the land of extreme evil as terrifying as you describe, using worlds as nourishment? What exactly is inside?" Long Sun was startled and shook his head. "I'm not sure about that, as the further inside you go, the more violent it becomes, and it has never calmed down, so not many people can reach the deepest part. But according to past rumors," he paused, "inside there are all sorts of horrific figures and mysterious patterns and constructions, filled with endless anger and murderous intent." Listening to Long Sun's narration, Su Chi's brows lightly furrowed. He knew one thing. That was that this so-called land of extreme evil contained the first instance he entered, the town full of murderers he had cleared. And that was also the beginning of everything. The will of the evil god traversed world barriers, broke free from the ceiling, and arrived here with boundless anger. This was not a power that projections could compare to. Even a trace of its actual form wielded a terrifyingly extraordinary power, which directly caused the astonishing phenomena of the land of extreme evil. Time to return to the old place and meet old friends again. He was truly very happy. The old professor and Duen stayed behind, continuing to seek more details with Long Sun. Su Chi did not linger further. The world ship fragment was nearing the star ring. He now had more things to prepare. Half a day passed. Both Bai Yilan and Jiang Ji had received news from Su Chi. Knowing that the place they were approaching was the land of extreme evil, both of them breathed a sigh of relief. After all, as players, this was exactly the kind of event and opportunity they were looking for. They were also finalizing their training, striving to enhance their own strength. Meanwhile, Duen and the old professor had also reached a cooperative intention with Long Sun, preparing to fully heal his injuries with the help of ability users, then together step into the land of extreme evil. Both parties had their little secrets, but Su Chi was willing to bet that none of their secrets were as big as his. "Master, here is what you asked for, created with the enhancement of the mechanical core." Xiaomeng handed over something made on the starship to Su Chi. "Let me see." Su Chi picked up a pair of lens glasses. "These are special contact lenses that can conceal your pupils. They are of high strength and won't easily be damaged like various ordinary glasses." Su Chi put them on, and the projection of the sheephead within his pupils was concealed, replaced by normal pupils. Not bad. Not only can it change colors, but it can also glow. Su Chi's eyes emitted a sharp light. Xiaomeng. Reminder to the master. After experiencing direct vibration of over 100,000 spiritual energy for more than 5 seconds, it will be destroyed. Okay. Having addressed this point was pretty important for Su Chi, given the evil god projection, patterns, aura, and so forth. If it ever burst forth in the land of extreme evil or got exposed to the public, that would be an incredible hassle. The term despicable person is still a bit harsh, so let's stay anonymous for now. Duen was also arranging various missions for Organization X. Entering the land of extreme evil was imminent, and he had to arrange things at the rear, but with the old professor watching the back, there was no need for excessive worry. Meanwhile, Su Qi had hidden the starship deep in this world, leaving Xiao Meng in charge, especially since it contained the exceptional mechanical core. It was also a key research area for the Hustlers sect. The next morning, detection agencies around the world were sending messages toward the headquarters of Organization X. Anomaly detected. There are large amounts of unknown rays ahead. The gravitational forces around space are intensifying. Widespread power outages in various cities. Despite these various anomalies, the upper echelons of Organization X remained extraordinarily calm. Long Sun had already recovered from his injuries at this moment. He gazed toward the horizon. Don't panic. This means you are nearing the star ring. Next, watch for ripples in your world space that will lead to the land of extreme evil. Duen nodded. We are prepared. He took with him Organization X's top 50 ability users, intending to act alongside Long Sun. After all, their true purpose was to locate the coordinates of the god. Of course, Su Qi, Bai Yilan, and Jiang Ji were also among them. Who would have thought that after all our detours, we are still arriving at the site of the extreme evil incident? Bai Yilan murmured softly. I'm really glad I worked so hard this month. Jiang Ji clenched his fist. Once we meet the brothers from the Meteor Alliance, we'll definitely impress them. Su Qi. Remember to send them the Hustlers sect hero recruitment posters. Jiang Ji. Seems we still have to pull our brothers into this. I know, but it also depends on their willingness. Su Qi slightly lifted his head. Seems like something's stirring. The entire world's sky dome suddenly changed, darker than before. Yet one could see auroras flickering above, streaking across like meteors. Long Sun, with his rich experience, said, Here it comes. The surrounding electromagnetic bursts are beginning to interfere, and abnormal fluctuations will occur in the next minute. Su Qi watched this scene, letting Xiao Meng record it, as these fluctuations were not merely simple disturbances. They contained critical information about the coordinates. We've got it. Duen received a message. Strong abnormal fluctuations have appeared in the polar ice caps of the southern hemisphere. It seems that's the gateway. I'll go. The previous ability user opened the teleportation gate, and on the other side, it was a world of ice and snow. Long Sun was somewhat surprised by this scene. With so little time, he hadn't gotten too deeply involved with this world, also due in part to Duen and the old professor not giving him the space to learn. However, the peculiar superpowers also broadened his horizons, feeling that the people of this world possessed great potential. Long Sun looked at the people behind him. In fact, for the first time, you don't need too many people, just the elite, the top, those with strong potential, as they could return at any moment, which is the biggest advantage of the world approaching the land of extreme evil. Because this is like navigating an unknown world. Not a one-time, short-term exploration, but a long-term, multiple adventure. However, this is a matter of another world, and he could only make suggestions. Long Sun walked through the teleportation gate with the others into the ice and snow of the extreme lands. Su Qi looked at the distance. Strong ripples were fluctuating, a phenomenon they were quite familiar with, the space ripple channels. Long Sun, while looking after everyone, explained the phenomenon, trying to articulate some common rules of the present world. I'm crying. This is the passage. Everyone, let's set out. Long Sun took the lead and stepped forward. Although this guy had hidden a lot, Su Qi knew he wasn't a bad person, and like Duen, he had a warm heart. As for the reasons he hid and lied, TSK. In the present world, who doesn't carry something on their back? Brother Su, let's go. Bai Yilan and Jiang Ji were also ready. Jiang Ji smiled. It's our turn to make a big splash and become famous. Sure, just remember to invoke the name of the leader of the Hustlers sect when the time comes. It'll intimidate the enemies. Su Qi said calmly. Who would know about this sect? Jiang Ji rolled his eyes. Besides, it's been half a year. Brother Su, your ranking has actually dropped. After all, the bounty list now is like a war among gods. Su Qi smiled. True. More than half a year had passed. He hadn't shown himself much, and the storm had been somewhat suppressed. But a more important reason was many descendants, divine sons, people from the past had revived. They had sprung up on the bounty list almost like bamboo shoots after a rain, and nearly every newcomer was being ruthlessly suppressed. It's okay. They will come to recognize the 3 words, Su Buxian again. Everyone stepped into the Ripple Passage, officially starting their journey into the land of extreme evil. And naturally, Su Qi was prepared. He still didn't know much about this place. It's like struggling outside for 10 years, then returning to your hometown. Chances are the hometown would have completely changed, and the people there wouldn't recognize him anymore. As soon as Su Qi stepped into the ripple, it was like being consumed by a great tide of darkness in his personal space. His entire being was shifting amidst the distortion. And the next moment, Su Qi slowly regained his vision. They appeared in an endless ground where one could see the starry sky. All around was desolation. Everyone became cautious. But Long Sun stretched out his hand. Don't panic. Because the land of extreme evil has absorbed a lot of space fragments. Except for the part around Extreme Evil City. 99% is uninhabited wilderness. You just need to mark the coordinates of this place and hide your presence. Duan nodded. I understand. He had naturally prepared for this, hiding this part of the ripple using special objects. Meanwhile, Bai Yilan and Jiang Ji looked slightly moved. Brother Su, calm down, I saw it. At this moment, the long-absent pop-up from the Paradise System finally appeared. Extremely Evil World Event Chapter 1 has been triggered. Undercurrents are surging in the land of extreme evil. All players are advised to stay as long as possible in this area to obtain clues about the new strategy. Players will receive significant staged rewards at the end of each chapter. Please note, players will return to Paradise upon death, losing progress, but will have the chance to re-enter the land of extreme evil. After more than 5 deaths, they will be completely unable to participate in this event. Finally triggered, Jiang Ji was somewhat moved. This is my first time seeing the Paradise System do this. I was scared I couldn't get out. Calm down. Su Qi was already used to the Paradise System glitching and acting up. So, Tour Guide Long, where should we go now? Long Sun. Simple. He pulled something out of his pocket. We go where the gravitational pull is strongest. Long Sun quickly found the direction, under the illumination of the countless stars. The group began heading towards Extreme City. As they walked, Long Sun said seriously, also, before we enter Extreme Evil City, I need to remind you of something. There are many powers inside, but they're nearly all divided and occupied by the biggest factions. Of course, you barely qualify to interact with them, but still, let me warn you. Long Sun gently said, it's called the Land of Extreme Evil because the complexity and chaos inside are beyond your imagination. Everyone approached Extreme Evil City together. As they drew closer, the guiding object in Long Sun's hand became increasingly heavy. We should be close to the front now. Su Qi gazed into the distance, and it seemed that through the thick dust, he could see a colossal entity, the so-called Extreme Evil City. It wasn't merely a simple city. It felt more like a massive space fragment where numerous powers had stationed themselves. After more than half a year of development, it had already become a long-term, bustling region teeming with life. There are people nearby. They also saw that there were already quite a few people around. Some had indifferent expressions, some wore robes and were unwilling to show their faces, while others displayed various racial characteristics. Their expressions were filled with confusion. Duan became more puzzled as he walked. Are there so many people? He had originally thought that bringing 50 people would have been very conspicuous, but he had not expected to now be surrounded by crowds. That's normal. Long Sun looked at the scene and calmly shook his head, softly saying, every moment, worlds are drawn here. some so fragile that a large number of people can only flee and rush here. And then there are others from the various realms of the present world, scrambling and flocking here in droves. Now do you understand? Long Sun looked at the massive outline appearing before their eyes. The kilometer-high city walls were faintly emanating an almost suffocating aura, a lofty sense of oppression that made everyone's scalp tingle. This is how immense the energy of extreme evil city is, and how insignificant you and your worlds are. Du En and the others deepened in solemnity, and Jiang Zi's excitement was replaced by awe. After all, they could now fully sense the vastness here, with many huge powers lounging like giant beasts. They were now close to the immense city. What a magnificent place! There are even patterns on top. Countless people lifted their heads, their expressions filled with reverence as they looked up at the patterns on the massive city walls. Long Sun saw the patterns and breathed a sigh of relief. It's the symbols of the 7 great commerce. If it's the commerce, it won't be too chaotic. This place is relatively peaceful and safe. Su Qi looked at the pattern above, which was a design jointly created by 7 different totems, representing the cooperation of these 7 top trading guilds. He also turned his gaze to the entrance of the city. Many people are still queuing to enter, and it seems they have to pay as well. Long Sun nodded. Because it's too dangerous to stay outside the land of extreme evil for long, large-scale unstable outbreaks occur frequently, ranging from devastating disasters to spatial rifts. That's why this is a sanctuary area built by the investment of the 7 great commerce, with rituals in operation inside and a very stable space. Naturally, one must pay a fee to be sheltered. Su Qi clicked his tongue lightly. He also saw the cost of entering the city, which was 2,000 spirit coins per person just to enter. Given the volume of people here and the numerous entry pathways, Su Qi estimated that nearly 1 million people were entering each day. Damn! Making money is so easy. If you don't have money, you can also give other items of equivalent value or labor, such as mining inside, outputting spiritual energy, and other jobs. Long Sun paused. However, you don't need to worry. I will cover it for you. First, it was to repay the favor of being saved. Second, for more than 50 people, it was just over 100,000 spirit coins, which wasn't much for him. After all, anything you can get from there can be sold for 10 times, 100 times, or even 1,000 times the price easily. Long Sun spoke softly. That's why countless people flock here. As a divine son, Du En naturally still had plenty of spirit coins left, not billions but at least tens of millions, but it was best not to reveal that. He nodded. Then I shall entrust this matter to you. Su Qi didn't refuse either, but his gaze was eager. This place was indeed a great opportunity for making money and growth. A large number of life poured in like a tide. He had many items that held amazing business opportunities like the products analyzed from the mechanical core, the Starfire potion, etc., but what he lacked were large channels. And for the Starfire potion, to increase data and research progress, it could be distributed for free to a large number of natives in isolated worlds. But as Su Qi privately thought, when the new version was ready, it could also be sold to the large population of the present world. Brother Su, what are you thinking about? It's our turn to go in. Du En called to Su Qi. Nothing much. Su Qi. I was just thinking that one should drive the local economy when returning home in glory, not draw upon it.
Du En.
He didn't understand the implication. Let's go. Su Qi stepped towards the entrance. After paying 2,000 spirit coins each, everyone received a card that allowed passage through the entryway, much like an identification card. After all, the entire massive place was constructed with numerous rituals, and the top powers naturally participated, pouring in vast amounts of spirit coins and various resources. Of course, it was well worth it because of the huge profits to be made. It was just about collecting an entrance fee. Just this one pathway generated over 2 billion in revenue each day, not to mention everything inside. Su Qi also received his card, lightly rubbing it. It seemed to contain some spiritual energy, and some patterns were still flashing, seemingly connected to the rituals. Without further ado, he said, Xiao Meng, analyze this. Xiao Meng immediately responded. Xiao Meng had made great progress recently. From the initial 1/10,000th of a world's volume of information, it had completed a full 1% of a standard world's information volume, and her analysis speed was naturally 100 times faster than before. However, this kind of card is not on the same level as things from the ordinary world. Xiao Meng also took some time. Master, besides the femto-level precision units, this card also contains a meticulous ritual composed of tiny amounts of spiritual energy, of a relatively high equivalent rank. If we were to fully decrypt it, it would take about a month. Look, this is a ritual arranged by a powerful being, where even just a plain card is shrouded in complete secrecy. Then, what if we combine it with the mechanical core? The more data Xiao Meng received from the mechanical core, the more she could slightly leverage its radiating strength. Of course, the duration was extremely short, since even a sliver of this core's power is immensely vast, and it could easily burn out a CPU. She paused, an estimate of 10 seconds, and after using it, the Super Dream Protocol would need a 10-hour downtime for cooling due to overload. Let's not do that then. You go back to continuing the analysis of the mechanical core. All right, Master. Card wasn't worth such efforts. Everyone stepped into Extreme Evil City together. As soon as they entered, they could see an abundance of bizarrely shaped high-tech buildings and visible star rings filling the sky. This place is too strange, Jiang Ji murmured while looking around. Combining with the things above the sky dome, it seems like a starry hub, filled with countless shops, advertisements, and people from myriad stars. Bai Yilan nodded in considerable agreement. Don't be deceived by appearances. Long Sun gently lifted his head. Take a closer look at the center of the sky dome. Following his gaze, everyone also lifted their heads. In the midst of the enormous star ring center, what hadn't been noticed before now became clear, revealing an unexplorable area of dark and chaotic darkness. That is the heart of the land of extreme evil, the place of innumerable worth, yet immensely dangerous. Every being here, one after another, longs to conquer it, everywhere brimming with conflicts and skirmishes. Those without backing find it almost impossible to even take a step in this place. Long Sun's words hinted at the endless chaos and cruelty under the guise of order, especially for visitors from the native world. It was extremely tough, even impossible to enter the city. A multitude of people from one world had already been wiped out by the erupting disasters. We will take heed, Duan solemnly nodded. For now, let's split up and gather information about this place. Coming to a strange land, naturally, the first thing to do was to gather all the information available. Jiang Ji and Bai Yilan had no objections. The group agreed to meet back here in 2 hours. Jiang Ji and Bai Yilan then said goodbye to Su Qi. Splitting up as experienced players of Paradise certainly had much to do. To know the progress of other players and gather with their own friends. But Su Qi, in contrast, wasn't in a hurry to leave and instead looked towards Long Sun with a smile. Because since arriving here, this man had been concealing his figure with a long robe, and even though he was chatting and socializing with them, he was on guard at all times. Brother Long, let's go together. Long Sun was startled. Aren't you going with them? No need. Long Sun's expression showed some difficulties. I've got something to do, and it's probably going to be troublesome. No problem, I don't mind trouble. Long Sun felt he had made himself quite clear, but did the guy in front of him, named Su Qi, not get it? Or was he doing it on purpose? He sighed lightly. To be honest with you, the place I'm headed to, if you follow me, might draw unnecessary trouble. It's fine, I can help you. You help. Long Sun's expression became complex. He had realized after spending a few days in Du and Superpower World that most people were simple, kind-hearted, and sincere. This was one of the reasons why he was willing to provide guidance to them. But at this moment, he really wanted to say, you, a person from the native world, how can you help at all? Do you have the strength, the background? Looking into Su Qi's pure and kind eyes, Long Sun eventually exhaled a sigh. All right then, let's go together. Su Qi and Long Sun began to act together in the Extreme Evil City. And just as Long Sun had said, there were a multitude of forces, races, and organizations here, with many people wearing various insignias. A mishmash of large and small powers could be seen everywhere. Long Sun was also constantly whispering introductions to Su Qi. That family, they're famous. They have a high-order superpower ranked in the sequence 5 behind them. Be careful, don't stare at those from the Spirit Eye race over there. They're very sensitive to eye contact and have hot tempers. And over there, Su Qi watched with amusement as Long Sun explained things to him. This guy was actually pretty decent. Having stayed here for several months was no lie, as he had come to understand a lot of the power dynamics. To Long Sun, for the people from the native world, trying to find a sliver of chance for survival and carve out a bloody path here was as difficult as ascending to heaven. So he spared no details in sharing with them. However, Su Qi saw clearly that this guy had plenty of secrets and was very wary of their surroundings all along the route. Long Sun had not mentioned where exactly they were going, only that they were going to retrieve something. Su Qi and Long Sun were sitting on the unique rapid transport of the land of extreme evil, and of course Su Qi was not idle, taking in all the information amongst the question marks he noticed. This area had already become a hub teeming with adventurers and numerous life forms from different worlds. The appeal of the land of extreme evil was evident, with a steady stream of newcomers arriving over the past half-year, and their numbers were still swelling. However, Su Qi could tell that most were 7th rank or lower, with very few sequence 6, and those were unlikely to show up on the outskirts. As for those higher up, they were even harder to spot. After all, those of a higher rank had already stepped into the extraordinary. Their degree of transcendence was completely different from the lower ranks, having become high-order extraordinary life forms of the present world. This place was simply not enough to attract such extraordinary beings. Long Sun looked towards the distance. We're almost there. Su Qi looked at the vast area ahead, thicker with people than the outskirts, and he could also see that most auras seemed much more profound. This is the largest trading area. The Central Territory is even home to those top-tier forces, but we don't need to look any closer, because we don't qualify to approach. My destination is here. Long Sun stopped in front of a building with 10,000 Realm Storage Center written on it. Su Qi paused. In such a chaotic place, there's actually such a function? After all, this is the central area, initiated by the 7 Spirit Kings and supported by many top-tier forces to establish order. Long Sun paused. No one dares to cause trouble here. Su Qi squinted his eyes slightly. He was thinking about something more. The 7 Spirit Kings and numerous top-tier powers joining hands to establish order? That was interesting. It could be seen as a rising sense of crisis against a backdrop of numerous divine sons, descendants, and ancient powers awakening. But don't cherish too many beautiful hopes. In principle, one should not fight here, but, with conflicts and enough interest at stake, anything can happen. Long Sun spoke quietly. Let's go after we fetch the item. We'll leave and meet up with the others. 1 second he talked about this being a place with some semblance of order, but the next he was thinking of leaving quickly. Su Qi looked at Long Sun with a somewhat restless and anxious expression but didn't expose him. He followed Long Sun into the building, and as soon as they entered, Long Sun's expression subtly changed. His body tensed up. Wait a second. What's the matter? Do you need to pee? Long Sun choked up for a moment, then lowered his hat brim. Don't talk. Walk quietly with me. There's an extremely troublesome presence. Su Qi looked towards the distance. Them? He saw several cloaked, faceless persons, and everyone else around seemed to be extremely fearful, keeping their distance. Don't look. That group is made up of assassins from the top-tier force, Darkstriders. Long Sun's face was marked with an extremely grave and uneasy expression as he whispered with spiritual energy. And they specialize in killing those listed on the bounty.